Ever find yourself scrolling through Rick and Morty episodes at 2 a.m., caught in that weird space between wanting to sleep but also wanting to hear Rick's sarcastic remarks one more time? You're not alone. Millions of animation fans have discovered that their favorite characters make the perfect sleep companions. This 2.5-hour sleep aid features the most soothing moments and dialogues from the multiverse's most dysfunctional family. We've carefully selected scenes that maintain the show's essence while helping your brain slowly power down for the night. No intense adventure music, no screaming, just the familiar voices that make the show special. Ever wonder why certain cartoon voices can lull you to sleep better than meditation apps? There's actually some fascinating science behind why Rick and Morty might be the perfect bedtime companion. When we listen to familiar voices from characters we've spent hours with, our brains process them differently than unfamiliar sounds or even generic white noise machines. These familiar vocal patterns create a unique form of audio comfort that helps viewers transition to sleep in a way that traditional relaxation content simply can't match. Traditional sleep aids like meditation apps or nature sounds certainly have their place, but they often lack something crucial: an emotional connection. There's no relationship there, no history of shared experiences. When we listen to characters we've followed for multiple seasons, we're tapping into established neural pathways. Our brains recognize Rick's distinctive speech patterns or Morty's anxious stammering and immediately feel a sense of familiarity that signals safety to our nervous system. This familiarity triggers the release of oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, creating a biochemical comfort response. The key difference is how our brains process these familiar dialogue patterns compared to unfamiliar sounds. Neuroscience research has shown that recognizable voices activate different neural pathways than generic sounds. When we hear characters we know well, our brains don't need to work as hard to process the information. This reduced cognitive load creates a sense of security and comfort. It's the audio equivalent of being in a familiar room versus an unfamiliar one. Our guard naturally comes down when we're in an environment our brain has already categorized as safe. What's particularly interesting about animated shows as sleep aids is that they offer just enough mental engagement to quiet an overactive mind, without being stimulating enough to keep you fully awake. This moderate engagement is crucial for people who struggle with racing thoughts at bedtime. When your brain is slightly occupied with following familiar characters and storylines, it's less likely to spiral into anxious thought patterns about tomorrow's responsibilities or yesterday's embarrassments. It's a form of mental distraction that works specifically because it's engaging without being novel or exciting. The specific audio qualities in Rick and Morty's voice acting contribute significantly to its effectiveness as a sleep aid. Justin Roiland's voice work as both Rick and Morty creates a consistent sonic landscape with distinctive rhythms and patterns. Rick's gravelly, slightly slurred speech with frequent burps and pauses creates an unpredictable yet familiar audio texture that's surprisingly soothing when you're not focusing on the actual content. Morty's higher-pitched, stammering delivery provides a perfect counterpoint, creating a sonic balance that keeps the listener gently engaged without jarring audio transitions. Another important factor is how the show's characteristic pacing transforms when scenes are specifically selected for relaxation. While Rick and Morty is known for its rapid-fire dialogue and frenetic pacing in its most action-packed moments, the show also contains numerous scenes of philosophical conversation, quiet contemplation, and character development. When these moments are specifically compiled, they create a different experience entirely. The natural cadence of dialogue followed by brief pauses creates a rhythm similar to guided breathing exercises, subconsciously encouraging listeners to sync their breathing with these natural breaks. The show also features a wide dynamic range in its audio presentation that works surprisingly well for sleep. The background sounds in Rick's garage, the soft, ambient noises of the Smith household, and the subtle score that underlines emotional moments all create a rich but not overwhelming audio environment. When compiled specifically for relaxation, these scenes avoid the sudden volume spikes or jarring sound effects that might interrupt the transition to sleep, instead maintaining a consistent audio landscape that signals safety to the brain. What makes Rick and Morty particularly effective compared to other animated shows is the specific character dynamics at play. The relationship between Rick and Morty creates a narrative foundation that's complex enough to be engaging but familiar enough to be comforting. Their conversations often explore existential themes that paradoxically work well for sleep content. They're thought-provoking without requiring active problem-solving. The philosophical nature of their exchanges gives the mind something substantive to focus on, without demanding the kind of alert attention that would prevent sleep. The grandfather-grandson dynamic also taps into fundamental relationship patterns that feel inherently familiar to most people. This relationship archetype creates emotional resonance that transcends the sci-fi elements of the show. Even when discussing multiverse theory or the meaninglessness of existence, the underlying family dynamic creates an emotional anchor that viewers can connect with on a subconscious level. This emotional familiarity contributes significantly to the feeling of security that helps facilitate sleep. The show's unique blend of cynicism and surprising moments of tenderness also creates an emotional complexity that works well for sleep aid purposes. Rick's nihilistic worldview often gives way to moments of genuine care, while Morty's naivety occasionally reveals unexpected wisdom. This emotional texture creates a more engaging experience than the one-dimensional positivity of many traditional sleep aids, which can sometimes feel forced or inauthentic. The honest emotional range in Rick and Morty creates a space where listeners can process their own complex feelings without judgment. What ultimately makes Rick and Morty work so effectively as a sleep aid is the perfect combination of familiar voices, moderate emotional engagement, and unique sound design. The familiar vocal patterns create immediate comfort. The moderate engagement gives racing minds something to focus on without overstimulation. And the sound design creates a consistent audio environment that signals safety to the nervous system. Together, these elements transform content that wasn't originally designed for sleep into something that works remarkably well for that purpose. This transformation happens because the compilation format allows for careful curation of the show's quieter moments. By selecting scenes that feature more measured dialogue, philosophical musings, and character development over high-action sequences, the compilation creates a different experience than watching the show normally would provide. This intentional selection process creates a progression of scenes that gradually reduces cognitive engagement, guiding viewers naturally towards sleep without them even realizing it's happening. The spaces between Rick's chaos might actually contain the show's most meaningful content. When animation's most cynical character stops performing his indifference to the universe, his voice transforms into something almost unrecognizable, quieter, more measured, and surprisingly profound. These rare, vulnerable moments from a character who's built his entire identity around emotional invulnerability create a different kind of comfort entirely, one that feels like overhearing someone finally telling the truth after hours of elaborate lies. Rick Sanchez exists in two distinct vocal registers throughout the series. There's the Rick we all know, the manic, burping, rapid-fire delivery that accompanies his adventures and scientific explanations. But then there's the other Rick, the one who occasionally emerges when he believes no one is really paying attention or when he's been emotionally cornered. This second Rick speaks at almost half the volume, with significantly fewer verbal tics and a cadence that borders on hypnotic. Consider the scene where Rick sits alone in his garage after the house party in Ricksy Business, believing the family has abandoned him. His usual bombastic energy completely disappears as he speaks to himself in hushed, measured tones about what it means to be left behind. The alcohol-induced slurring remains, but it becomes gentler, almost melodic. Justin Roiland's performance in these moments creates a completely different sonic texture, removing the harsh edges that define Rick's standard delivery and replacing them with something surprisingly soothing. These transitions happen most noticeably during Rick's rare moments of emotional honesty. When he finally admits to Morty that he actually values their relationship in the Ricklantis mix-up, his vocal patterns shift dramatically. The sarcastic barbs dissolve, the volume drops by at least half, and even the pitch of his voice lowers to create a more intimate conversational tone. What makes these moments particularly effective as components of a sleep aid is the way they combine familiar character voice with unexpected vulnerability, creating a sense of safety through both recognition and emotional resonance. Rick's philosophical musings become particularly mesmerizing in these quieter deliveries. When he explains to Morty that what people call love is just a chemical reaction that compels animals to breed. In Rick Potion number 9, the cynical content is undercut by the surprisingly gentle delivery. It's as if the character is trying to convince himself more than Morty. This tension between what Rick says and how he says it creates a compelling psychological portrait that rewards multiple listenings. The compilation format allows viewers to experience these philosophical moments back to back, creating a soothing stream of existential contemplation rather than isolated cynical outbursts. The garage scenes throughout the series contain some of Rick's most vulnerable vocal performances. When he works on inventions late at night, his running commentary becomes almost meditative, replacing his daytime bombast with something approaching tenderness. In The Old Man and the Seat, Rick's monologue about personal space and boundaries while working alone reveals a completely different vocal approach, measured, thoughtful, and devoid of the performative elements that characterize his interactions with others. These workshop soliloquies create a sense of intimate access to the character's authentic self, making viewers feel like they're sharing a private moment with someone who rarely lets their guard down. What's particularly fascinating about these shifts is how they reveal Rick's standard vocal performance as exactly that, a performance. The yelling, the burping, the rapid-fire insults all serve as defense mechanisms for a character desperate to maintain emotional distance. When those defenses momentarily fall, we hear something closer to the real Rick Sanchez, a man wrestling with fundamental questions of meaning and connection, despite his claims of nihilistic detachment. This realization transforms how we listen to the character throughout the series, adding emotional depth to even his most caustic moments. In autoerotic assimilation, after Unity leaves him, Rick's attempted suicide scene contains perhaps his most vulnerable vocal moment in the entire series. The complete silence of his preparation makes his few utterances land with devastating impact. The slurring becomes pronounced not from scientific excitement, but from genuine emotional devastation. When he mutters, "Unity," before collapsing, the single word carries more emotional weight than entire monologues elsewhere in the show. This scene appears in the compilation with strategic purpose. It demonstrates that beneath Rick's cynical exterior lies a capacity for connection so profound that its loss nearly destroys him. The relationship scenes between Rick and Morty feature some of the most effective examples of Rick's quieter voice. When Rick actually listens to Morty instead of dismissing him, his voice naturally softens. In The Rick-Shurian Morty Date, their conversation about whether to stay with the family showcases Rick's more measured delivery as he genuinely considers Morty's perspective. The usual power dynamic momentarily shifts, and Rick's voice reflects this change, less didactic, more contemplative. These moments of authentic exchange between the characters create a particularly soothing audio experience, as the usual combative edge disappears from their interaction. The show cleverly uses these vocal shifts to signal Rick's emotional state more reliably than his actual words. In The Wedding Squanchers, when Rick sacrifices his freedom to protect his family, his farewell to Morty contains none of his usual vocal fireworks. The delivery becomes almost monotone, stripped of performance elements, revealing the profound emotional impact of his decision. These moments where Rick's voice betrays emotions he verbally denies create a fascinating listening experience that rewards attention to these subtle shifts in delivery. What makes these quieter Rick moments particularly effective as sleep aid material is how they subvert our expectations of the character. The compilation deliberately juxtaposes scenes of Rick's manic delivery with his more subdued moments, creating a soothing rhythm that naturally guides listeners toward the calmer end of his emotional spectrum. This progression mirrors the natural winding down process of preparing for sleep, moving from higher energy states to increasingly tranquil ones. Rick's rare moments of genuine affirmation toward Morty showcase some of his most soothing vocal work. In the Vat of Acid episode, when Rick finally acknowledges Morty's creative contribution, his voice loses all its harsh edges. The backhanded nature of the compliment is undercut by the surprisingly gentle delivery, creating a moment of connection that feels earned precisely because it's so rare. These instances where Rick momentarily drops his cynical shield reveal a character capable of genuine warmth, making his voice an unexpectedly comforting presence. The compilation smartly includes several scenes where Rick speaks while engaged in mundane activities, fixing equipment, mixing chemicals, or simply driving the spaceship. These moments naturally feature his more measured delivery, as he's not actively performing his Rick persona for an audience. The ambient sounds of tinkering combined with his lower volume musings create a textured audio experience that pulls listeners into a more intimate space with the character. The rhythmic quality of these work scenes provides a perfect backdrop for transitioning to sleep. While Rick's quieter moments reveal the hidden depths of his character, it's Morty's transformation that plays out in full view across the series. The trembling, hesitant teenager we meet in the first episodes gradually develops into someone capable of making difficult decisions, and even challenging the smartest person in the multiverse. This evolution creates a particularly satisfying narrative thread to follow as you drift towards sleep, offering a sense of growth and resolution that's engaging without being overstimulating. In the show's earliest episodes, Morty's voice is defined by its uncertainty. His sentences frequently trail off into half-formed thoughts, punctuated by nervous uhs and ums that reflect his constant state of anxiety. When Rick first drags him through a portal in the pilot episode, Morty can barely form complete sentences in his panic, his voice cracking with fear. The stammer that characterizes early Morty isn't just a vocal affectation. It's the audible manifestation of a character completely overwhelmed by circumstances beyond his control. This vocal insecurity makes Morty's early attempts to stand up to Rick especially poignant. In Me Seeks and Destroy, when Morty proposes that he should get to choose every 10th adventure, his voice still trembles but finds moments of unexpected strength. The scene captures Morty at a pivotal transition point, still deferential, still uncertain, but beginning to assert his own needs. The way his voice rises slightly in pitch when he makes his demand, and then immediately softens when Rick challenges him, showcases the delicate balance of his emerging confidence. By Season 2, we start hearing subtle shifts in Morty's vocal patterns. In Morty Night Run, when confronted with the moral dilemma of protecting Fart, an entity that plans to eliminate all carbon-based life, Morty's voice takes on a new quality. His decision to kill Fart is delivered with a resigned steadiness that was entirely absent in Season 1. The dialogue is minimalist, just a few words, but carries tremendous emotional weight because it comes from a character we've watched struggle to find his voice. The Sleep Aid compilation wisely includes scenes from Look Who's Purging Now, where Morty temporarily succumbs to violence during an annual purge night on an alien planet. When he later processes his actions with Rick, his voice fluctuates between shame and a new kind of self-awareness. These quieter, reflective conversations that follow intense moments are perfect for a sleep aid, as they provide emotional resolution while lowering energy levels. Season 3 marks a significant evolution in Morty's vocal confidence. In Vindicators 3, The Return of World Ender, Morty navigates Rick's drunken death traps with surprising competence, even explaining to the superhero team that he's learned from experience. His voice here has lost much of its hesitation. Sentences flow more consistently, his words more deliberately chosen. When he tells Rick, "You're the smartest man in the universe and you're trying to prove it to the Avengers," the delivery is measured and direct, without the characteristic stammer of earlier seasons. Perhaps the most dramatic shift occurs in Rest and Ricklaxation, when a toxic removal machine separates healthy Morty from his insecurities and negative traits. Healthy Morty speaks with remarkable confidence, his sentences flowing smoothly without a single stutter. While this version of Morty is eventually reintegrated with his toxic side, the episode serves as a fascinating vocal experiment, showing listeners what Morty might sound like without the weight of anxiety constantly. Pressing on his vocal delivery, the compilation includes multiple scenes from The Ricklantis Mix-Up, featuring the confidence-filled Evil Morty, who orchestrates a complex political coup on the citadel of Ricks. The contrast between this Morty's measured, almost emotionless delivery and our familiar Morty creates an interesting audio experience. The calm, controlled speech patterns of Evil Morty offer a sonic preview of what our Morty might eventually become, for better or worse. By Season 4, in episodes like Edge of Tomorty, Rick Die Rickpeat, Morty has developed enough confidence to actively pursue his own desires, even against Rick's explicit warnings. When he insists on keeping a death crystal despite the dangers, his voice carries a new quality of determination. The stammer hasn't disappeared entirely. It emerges in moments of extreme stress, but it's no longer his default mode of communication. The Vat of Acid episode provides some of the most compelling evidence of Morty's vocal evolution. When he criticizes Rick's Vat of Acid plan as the fake movie theater and the floor is going to open up and we're going to fall in, his delivery is pointed and articulate, directly challenging Rick's intelligence without hesitation. Later, when he discovers that months of his life experience were erased by Rick, his angry confrontation shows how far he's come from the meek grandson of Season 1. His voice rises in both volume and pitch, but unlike his earlier emotional outbursts, this one is controlled and purposeful. The Sleep compilation strategically pairs these more assertive moments with the quieter conversations that follow them. After Morty confronts Rick about the reset device, there's a softer exchange where both characters reflect on their relationship. These moments where Morty processes his experiences create natural emotional downbeats that guide listeners toward relaxation. Season 5's Rick-dependent spray and Mort dinner. Rick Andre feature a Morty who regularly pushes back against Rick's plans and makes independent decisions. His vocal delivery has developed a quality of resigned experience. He's seen enough to know how things are likely to go wrong, and this knowledge gives his voice a world-weary quality that contrasts with his physical youth. When he tells Rick, "I know how this goes," there's a weight to his words that wasn't present in earlier seasons. The compilation includes a beautiful scene from Rick Mirai Jack, where Morty confronts Rick about always abandoning him. The delivery here is nuanced, still recognizably Morty, but with years of accumulated experience reflected in his more measured pace and thoughtful pauses. His question to Rick, "Do you hate me?" is delivered with a vulnerability that feels more conscious than the inadvertent vulnerability of early episodes. What makes these scenes especially suitable for a sleep aid is the way they balance emotional engagement with gentle pacing. Morty's growth doesn't happen in dramatic leaps, but in small moments of standing his ground, making difficult choices, and processing the results. Following this gradual evolution creates an emotionally satisfying narrative that engages without overstimulating the mind. The compilation also includes scenes that showcase Morty's moral development. In Morty's Mind Blowers, we see Morty insist that Rick remove memories where Morty has made ethical mistakes, revealing a character increasingly concerned with his own moral compass. These quieter moments of self-reflection are particularly effective for nighttime listening, as they prompt gentle contemplation rather than intense emotional responses. Beyond Morty's individual growth lies something even more fascinating: the relationship between him and Rick that forms the emotional core of the series. This connection somehow works despite every reason it shouldn't, creating a rhythm of conflict and reconciliation that mirrors the gentle transition towards sleep. Their dynamic isn't just compelling during active viewing. It's perhaps most effective when experienced in those drowsy moments before sleep takes hold. The scenes where Rick and Morty simply exist together without universe-ending threats create a narrative metronome that's naturally conducive to relaxation. In The Old Man and the Seat, we witness an exchange where neither character speaks above a whisper as they discuss the concept of privacy. Rick's admission that everyone has a right to their secret special place comes with none of his typical defensiveness, while Morty responds with genuine understanding rather than fearful stammering. This measured back and forth creates a verbal lullaby that maintains just enough engagement to quiet racing thoughts without demanding full attention. What makes their relationship particularly suited for nighttime listening is how it balances tension with resolution. In One Crew Over the Crew Coos Morty, the pair finds themselves trapped in a spaceship's engine room with depleting oxygen. Rather than the frantic shouting we might expect, the scene unfolds with hushed urgency. Rick acknowledges his mistake while Morty offers solutions instead of complaints. The scene concludes with mutual recognition of their teamwork, providing the emotional resolution that helps listeners feel safe enough to drift off. The grandfather-grandson framework provides a familiar foundation that transcends the show's science fiction elements. In the Rick Morty date, a quiet conversation in the garage includes Rick asking Morty about his day at school, a surprisingly normal interaction between family members. This mundane moment feels weighted with significance precisely because of its contrast with their typical adventures. The comfort derives not from elaborate world-building, but from recognizable emotional territory that remains constant across dimensions. Their relationship contains multitudes: mentor and student, abuser and victim, partners and adversaries. But the compilation emphasizes moments where neither character fully embodies any single role. Rickmancing the Stone features a scene where they sit silently side by side, watching a post-apocalyptic sunset. No words are exchanged for nearly 2 minutes, yet the emotional content remains rich as the characters process a recent loss together. This shared silence creates space for the listener to process their own thoughts while still feeling accompanied. The compilation strategically includes scenes where their typical dynamic inverts completely. In The Rickshank Redemption, Morty explains interdimensional travel to Summer with the weary expertise of someone who's seen too much. His calm, measured explanation lacks his previous nervousness while highlighting his accumulated wisdom. Meanwhile, Rick, typically the knowledge keeper, listens silently from the garage, acknowledging Morty's growth with a subtle nod that speaks volumes. These role reversals create a satisfying narrative complexity that engages without overstimulating. Their conversations reveal mutual understanding that deepens over time. In Pickle Rick, the final therapy scene features neither character directly addressing the other, yet their shared glances communicate volumes about their mutual awareness of dysfunction. Dr. Wong's observation that the thing about repairing, maintaining, and cleaning is that it's not an adventure resonates between them without requiring explicit acknowledgement. This shared understanding creates a sense of intimacy that extends to the listener, who becomes part of this silent communication. The cadence of their interactions changes dramatically in quieter moments. Rattlestar Rick Lactica includes a scene where Rick explains time travel rules to Morty in an unusually patient tone. Rather than berating Morty for mistakes, Rick offers guidance with surprising gentleness. Morty, in turn, asks thoughtful questions instead of panicking. Their voices maintain a consistent volume and pace throughout, creating an almost hypnotic rhythm, perfect for transitioning towards sleep. What makes these interactions particularly effective as sleep aid material is the emotional authenticity that emerges in subdued scenes. In The ABCs of Beth, Rick's offer to create a clone of Beth comes without his usual sarcasm or deflection. The conversation unfolds with real vulnerability as Rick admits he sees his own self-destructive tendencies in his daughter. Morty witnesses this rare moment of honesty from the periphery, his silence conveying understanding rather than judgment. This emotional honesty creates a sense of resolution that helps quiet the listener's mind. The compilation includes several instances where their relationship demonstrates remarkable resilience. The Whirly-Durly Conspiracy features a post-adventure conversation where they acknowledge a near-death experience with surprising casualness. This isn't denial, but rather the comfortable shorthand of people who have weathered countless storms together. The scene communicates that no matter how chaotic their adventures become, their connection remains a constant, a reassuring message for listeners seeking comfort before sleep. Their relationship's natural evolution mirrors the process of drifting towards sleep itself. Early interactions feature sharper contrasts and more defined roles, while later scenes blend their characteristics as they influence each other. Starmort Rickturn of the Jerry includes a moment where they finish each other's sentences while repairing the ship, demonstrating how thoroughly they've absorbed each other's thought patterns. This gradual merging of perspectives creates a sense of resolution that supports the natural winding down of consciousness. The emotional stakes in their relationship remain compelling without becoming overwhelming. In Morty's Mind Blowers, they discover they've both been erasing memories that make them look bad. Rather than sparking another adventure, this revelation leads to a quiet moment of mutual forgiveness. Rick simply says, "Let's agree to forget this ever happened," with Morty responding, "Agreed." This simple resolution acknowledges complex emotions without demanding the listener process intense conflict, perfect for maintaining that delicate pre-sleep engagement. Their shared vulnerability creates moments of unexpected tenderness. Edge of to Morty, Rick Die Rick Pete features Rick as a hologram following his physical death, dependent on Morty in ways that invert their usual power dynamic. Rather than fighting this reversal, both characters adapt with surprising grace. Morty takes responsibility without becoming controlling, while Rick accepts assistance without resentment. This mutual adaptation demonstrates the flexibility of their bond, creating emotional satisfaction without narrative tension. The compilation emphasizes scenes where they protect each other without acknowledgement. In Never Ricking Morty, Rick creates an invisible barrier around Morty during a particularly dangerous moment while pretending to focus on something else entirely. Morty notices but doesn't comment, understanding Rick's need to maintain his facade of detachment. This unspoken care creates emotional safety that extends beyond the characters to envelop the listener. Their relationship remains compelling even in scenes with minimal dialogue. The Vat of Acid episode includes a sequence where they simply work together on a mechanical project, communicating through tools passed back and forth rather than words. The mechanical sounds create a soothing white noise backdrop, while their occasional grunts of effort form a minimalist conversation that requires no cognitive processing from the listener. The mechanical sounds of Rick and Morty working together might soothe us to sleep. But sometimes what our tired minds really crave is the comfortable predictability of the show's supporting cast. These secondary characters don't just fill space in the background. They create emotional anchors that ground us in something surprisingly close to everyday reality, despite existing in the most scientifically improbable universe ever created. While Rick and Morty hurtle through dimensions and confront cosmic horrors, it's often the quieter moments with the Smith family and other recurring characters that provide the perfect backdrop for drifting into sleep. Beth Smith stands out as a particularly effective sleep aid character, with her measured speech patterns and emotional complexity creating a different kind of comfort than Rick's manic energy. In The ABCs of Beth, we see her reflecting on her childhood while sharing a bottle of wine with her father, their conversation maintaining a steady, almost hypnotic rhythm. Beth's professional voice, the one she uses at the horse hospital, has a particular cadence that signals competence without demanding alertness from the listener. When she discusses equine anatomy with colleagues, the technical terminology creates a pleasant white noise effect, similar to listening to experts discuss their field. The compilation includes a 3-minute sequence from autoerotic assimilation, where Beth simply performs routine veterinary tasks while softly humming to herself, creating an unexpected moment of domestic tranquility. Jerry provides a different but equally effective sleep aid quality through his predictable reactions and familiar insecurities. His consistent vocal patterns when confronted with the bizarre, that signature, "What? What is happening?" delivered in the same inflection regardless of the threat, creates a comforting element of reliability. In Interdimensional Cable 2, Tempting Fate, Jerry's hospital bed monologue about his fear of becoming obsolete unfolds at exactly the right pace for pre-sleep contemplation, with natural pauses between his thoughts that allow the listener's mind to gently wander. The compilation features Jerry in The Whirly-Durly Conspiracy during the sequence where he quietly watches television after everyone has gone to bed, occasionally making soft commentary to himself. His mundane observations about late-night commercials create a perfect simulation of having non-threatening background conversation in your bedroom. Summer Smith brings a uniquely soothing quality through her deadpan delivery and emotional stability. Unlike the sometimes frantic energy of Rick or the anxious stammering of Morty, Summer's dialogue is often delivered with measured pacing and consistent volume. In Rickmancing the Stone, Summer's methodical description of her daily routine in the post-apocalyptic wasteland uses such even speech patterns that it transforms potentially exciting content into something surprisingly calming. The compilation includes the scene from Something Rick This Way Comes, where Summer reads aloud from a cursed book, her even tone and steady rhythm turning potentially disturbing content into an oddly effective bedtime story. Her subplot in Raising Gazerpazorp, where she simply organizes inventory at the cursed items shop, provides almost 5 continuous minutes of soft, methodical speech perfect for transitioning to sleep. Bird Person offers perhaps the most explicitly sleep-inducing supporting character, with his deliberately slow speech pattern and philosophical musings. His deep voice resonates at frequencies that naturally promote relaxation, while his minimal use of contractions creates a hypnotic speech rhythm. In Get Schwifty, Bird Person tends to Morty while explaining his culture's belief system, his monotone delivery and extended pauses between sentences creating natural opportunities for the listener's consciousness to begin drifting. The compilation features an extended version of their conversation from The Wedding Squanchers, where Bird Person explains the concept of Gubba Nub Nub Do Raka, which translates to whatever helps you sleep at night, the irony providing a meta moment for viewers using the compilation for exactly that purpose. Mr. Poopy Butthole transforms from a character with a potentially irritating voice into one that provides unexpected comfort through consistency and gentle optimism. His high-pitched delivery initially seems at odds with relaxation, but the compilation features his quieter moments, like his domestic scene in The Rick and Morty Date, where he softly narrates his evening routine to his young child. His catchphrase, "ooh-wee," appears at regular intervals throughout his scenes, creating a predictable audio pattern that the brain can easily process without maintaining full alertness. The scene where he recovers from his injuries in Total Recall includes almost 2 minutes of him simply breathing steadily and occasionally muttering reassurances to himself, creating an unintentional guided meditation. The compilation strategically uses Bird Person's wife Tammy to create transitions between character segments. Her deliberate speech pattern when she's undercover functions as a bridge between the more chaotic elements of the show and its quieter moments. In Rixie Business, Tammy describes her home planet's customs to summer, and the methodical explanation of fictional cultural practices creates just enough cognitive engagement to distract from racing thoughts without requiring full attention. Similarly, Squanchy's scenes are carefully selected to exclude his more manic moments, focusing instead on the rare instances where he explains technical aspects of spaceship repair or discusses his artwork in The Wedding Squanchers, his normally abrasive voice softened by genuine passion for his creative pursuits. Even minor characters like Principal Vagina and Mr. Goldenfold provide surprisingly effective sleep aid content when their scenes are carefully selected. Principal Vagina's administrative announcements in Big Trouble in Little Sanchez have a monotonous quality reminiscent of classroom films or public service announcements that many viewers associate with struggling to stay awake in school. Goldenfold's dream sequences in Lawnmower Dog create layers of nested reality that mirror the sensation of drifting between wakefulness and sleep, his mathematics lectures providing just enough mental stimulation to distract from anxious thoughts without requiring active processing. The Smith family home itself becomes a character in these quieter moments, with scenes of mundane household activities providing a familiar backdrop that contrasts with the show's interdimensional adventures. The compilation includes several scenes of simply existing in the Smith house. The sound of the refrigerator humming while Jerry makes a midnight snack, the distant noise of Summer's music playing from upstairs while Beth reads on the couch, the gentle clicking of Rick tinkering with a small device at the kitchen table while Morty does homework. These ambient domestic moments, free from plot advancement or character conflict, create a sense of being in a familiar space without requiring emotional investment from the viewer. What makes these supporting characters particularly effective for sleep aid purposes is how they create a sense of predictable community. Unlike Rick and Morty's wild adventures, secondary characters often appear in contexts with established patterns and limitations. Jerry will always be Jerry, reacting to the universe with consistent bewilderment. Beth will maintain her complex balance of competence and insecurity. Summer will navigate teenage life with her characteristic blend of apathy and insight. This reliability creates a different kind of comfort than the main character's growth arcs. It's the comfort of knowing exactly what you're getting, like a well-worn path through familiar woods. That familiar path through the woods becomes even more traversable when the audio terrain has been expertly smoothed out by technical wizardry. While the characters and dialogue draw us in, it's actually the invisible soundscape architecture that transforms Rick and Morty from an attention-demanding show into the perfect sleep companion. This isn't simply a collection of quieter scenes, it's a complete sonic reconstruction designed to guide your brain toward rest, without sacrificing what makes these characters feel authentic. The original episodes of Rick and Morty are mixed for maximum impact in a fully awake state. The show's sound designers deliberately craft a dynamic audio landscape with sharp contrasts. Explosive adventures punctuated by quieter moments, creating an engaging but fundamentally alerting experience. For this sleep compilation, however, those same scenes undergo a comprehensive audio transformation process that fundamentally alters how your nervous system responds to the content. The most significant modification involves compression and normalization across the entire 2.5-hour compilation. In the original episodes, volume levels frequently spike during Rick's outbursts or during action sequences, potentially jolting viewers awake. This compilation applies multi-band compression that maintains the character of each voice while restricting the maximum volume to prevent sudden disruptions to your relaxed state. The difference is subtle enough that you might not consciously notice it, but your nervous system certainly does. Background noise management represents another crucial aspect of the audio engineering. The original episodes feature rich environmental soundscapes that help establish locations. The mechanical hums of the garage, the alien atmospheres of distant planets, or the ambient noise of the Smith household. While these elements create immersion during active viewing, they can compete with dialogue and create cognitive processing demands that keep the brain alert. This compilation employs spectral noise reduction to selectively minimize non-essential background elements while preserving the core dialogue and maintaining just enough ambient sound to prevent the audio from feeling artificially isolated. Perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of the audio treatment involves frequency equalization, tailored specifically for sleep induction. Human voices naturally contain frequencies across a wide spectrum, but certain ranges tend to be more activating than others. This compilation applies a subtle roll-off of frequencies above 8 kHz, which reduces the piercing quality of certain consonants without making the dialogue sound muffled. Simultaneously, there's a gentle boost to the mid-range frequencies between 200 to 800 Hz, where voices carry their fundamental warmth and resonance. This equalization profile creates a sonic environment that your brain processes as both clear and non-threatening. The temporal spacing between scenes plays a crucial role as well. The original episodes maintain a rapid pace designed to hold attention, with scenes flowing quickly into one another. This compilation introduces calculated breathing room between segments. Not enough to feel disjointed, but sufficient to create natural lulls that mimic the rhythm of someone gradually drifting toward sleep. These micro-pauses extend slightly as the compilation progresses, subtly training your brain to accept increasingly longer quiet moments. Sound effects undergo perhaps the most aggressive filtering in this process. The original Rick and Morty episodes utilize an extensive library of distinctive sounds: portal guns firing, spaceships landing, alien creatures screeching, all designed to create vivid mental imagery. While perfect for engaged viewing, these sounds activate visual processing centers in the brain that can counteract sleep onset. This compilation systematically attenuates non-essential sound effects, reducing their volume by 40 to 60% relative to dialogue, and in some cases removing them entirely when they don't contribute to narrative comprehension. Even the music receives careful consideration in this audio engineering process. The original score for Rick and Morty ranges from frenetic synth work during adventures to more contemplative pieces during emotional moments. Rather than removing music entirely, this compilation selectively preserves and enhances the show's more ambient musical elements, particularly the slower synthesizer passages and atmospheric pads that appear during transitional moments. These musical elements are mixed at approximately 30% lower volume than in the original episodes and are frequency filtered to emphasize their lower, more hypnotic components. The compilation also employs subtle stereo field adjustments that contribute to its sleep-inducing quality. While the original episodes use the full stereo spectrum dynamically, with sounds moving between channels to match on-screen action, this approach can create directional alertness that works against relaxation. The sleep aid version narrows the stereo field slightly, centering more of the dialogue while allowing ambient elements to create a gentle stereo envelope that feels enveloping rather than directionally stimulating. What might surprise viewers is the careful treatment of silence itself within this compilation. The original episodes rarely employ true silence, maintaining at least some ambient sound almost constantly. In contrast, this compilation introduces brief moments of near silence that serve as reset points for the nervous system. These aren't jarring dropouts, but carefully crafted diminuendos where all audio elements gradually recede before the next scene begins, a technique borrowed from classical sleep music compositions. Digital signal processing also helps address some of Rick and Morty's more challenging audio characteristics. Rick's frequent burping, while integral to his character, creates unpredictable audio spikes that can be disruptive during pre-sleep listening. Rather than removing these character traits entirely, the compilation employs adaptive dynamics, processing that identifies and selectively tames these elements without eliminating them, preserving character authenticity while enhancing listening comfort. The cumulative effect of these audio engineering decisions transforms what was originally designed as attention-grabbing entertainment into something that exists in a unique middle ground. Still recognizably Rick and Morty, but restructured at the signal level to guide rather than demand your attention. It's a technical achievement that highlights how fundamentally different the same content can feel when its sonic architecture is deliberately reimagined. What's particularly fascinating is how these modifications work in concert with your brain's existing relationship to these characters. Because you already recognize these voices, your brain doesn't need to work as hard to process who's speaking, allowing the technical refinements to more effectively guide you toward a relaxed state. The familiar content provides the emotional anchor, while the audio engineering creates the optimal delivery system for sleep induction. Those familiar voices do more than just provide recognition. They activate emotional memory centers that fundamentally alter how your brain processes this content as you prepare for sleep. What's fascinating about this Rick and Morty compilation isn't just the technical refinements we've explored, but the psychological impact of these specifically selected moments. The scenes weren't chosen randomly. They were carefully curated for their unique emotional qualities that create the perfect mental environment for transitioning to sleep. The emotional resonance of Rick and Morty exists in a sweet spot that's remarkably conducive to relaxation. These scenes engage you just enough to quiet an anxious mind without demanding the full attention that would keep you awake. Think about those quiet moments when Rick drops his usual manic persona and speaks with genuine vulnerability. These hit differently at night because they tap into universal emotional experiences while maintaining a gentle delivery that doesn't overstimulate. What makes these emotional moments work so effectively is their balance of depth without distress. The compilation deliberately excludes the show's more intense conflicts. No screaming matches between family members, no violent alien encounters, and none of Rick's more aggressive outbursts. Instead, it focuses on scenes where characters express philosophical curiosity, gentle regret, or quiet appreciation for one another. These emotions create a form of engagement that feels meaningful without activating the stress responses that might interfere with falling asleep. The philosophical elements of Rick and Morty play a particularly important role in this emotional landscape. When Rick contemplates the nature of existence, or Morty questions his place in the multiverse, these moments create a specific type of mental engagement. They invite you to consider big questions without demanding immediate answers, allowing your thoughts to drift and expand in ways that actually mirror the transition into sleep. Your brain gradually loosens its grip on linear thinking, as these philosophical questions gently blur the boundaries between conscious thought and dreams. The compilation also leverages the show's more subdued humor rather than its frenetic comedy. Those subtle, character-based moments of humor, like Rick's deadpan delivery of an unexpectedly tender observation or Morty's quiet realization about something absurd, create small moments of pleasure without the jarring laughter that might disrupt your relaxation. This gentler humor provides emotional texture that keeps the experience engaging without being stimulating. What's particularly effective about these selected scenes is how they tap into universal emotional experiences. When Rick and Morty sit silently side by side processing a loss, or when family members exchange meaningful glances after a revelation, these moments connect with fundamental human experiences of connection, meaning, and acceptance. This universality creates a sense of emotional safety. You're not being challenged to process new or complex emotions, but rather being invited to recognize familiar feelings presented in a gentle way. The compilation's emotional effectiveness also comes from what it deliberately excludes. You won't find scenes featuring the show's more disturbing imagery, its existential horror elements, or moments where characters experience extreme distress. Those aspects of Rick and Morty, while central to its regular viewing experience, would create precisely the wrong emotional environment for sleep. Instead, the compilation focuses on emotional moments that provide resolution rather than tension, understanding rather than conflict. There's also an emotional journey created through the intentional sequencing of scenes throughout the compilation. Early segments feature slightly more emotionally engaging content that captures your initial attention through meaningful character interactions. As the compilation progresses, it gradually shifts towards scenes with simpler emotional textures, quiet companionship, gentle contemplation, and comfortable silences. This emotional progression mirrors the natural unwinding process your mind goes through as you transition from wakefulness to sleep. The emotional impact is further enhanced by focusing on scenes where characters express vulnerability. When Rick briefly lets his guard down and admits he values his relationship with Morty, or when Jerry expresses a genuine insecurity without his usual desperate approval. These moments create a sense of emotional authenticity. This authenticity fosters a different kind of connection with the content, one where you feel like you're witnessing real emotional truth rather than just being entertained. The audio treatment we explored earlier works in concert with this emotional content to create a uniquely effective sleep aid. Those technical modifications enhance the emotional impact by ensuring that vulnerable moments aren't lost in background noise, that philosophical musings are clearly audible without being jarring, and that the gentle humor lands without disrupting your relaxation. The emotional content provides the substance, while the audio engineering creates the perfect delivery system. What's perhaps most interesting is how differently we process these emotional moments when we're winding down compared to when we're fully alert. The same scene that might prompt active analysis or laughter during regular viewing takes on a more contemplative quality as you prepare for sleep. Your brain begins to process the emotional content more holistically and less analytically, allowing the feelings to wash over you rather than demanding you engage with them directly. The compilation also taps into the comfort of emotional continuity. By selecting scenes where characters display consistent emotional qualities across different episodes and seasons, it creates a sense of emotional reliability. This consistency is particularly valuable in a pre-sleep state when your brain is seeking patterns and predictability as part of the natural winding down process. Many traditional sleep aids focus exclusively on removing all sources of engagement, creating a blank emotional canvas. But this Rick and Morty compilation takes a different approach, recognizing that for many people, especially those with active minds, complete emotional neutrality can actually increase rumination and anxiety. Instead, it provides just enough emotional engagement to occupy those active thought processes without stimulating them further, creating what sleep researchers sometimes call a cognitive anchor that helps prevent your mind from wandering to stressful thoughts. Perhaps the most powerful aspect of this emotional resonance is how it creates a sense of companionship. As you drift towards sleep listening to these familiar characters express genuine emotions in their distinctive voices, there's a subtle psychological effect similar to having a trusted friend nearby. This feeling of emotional connection can be particularly valuable for people who struggle with loneliness or isolation at bedtime, providing a sense of companionship without the demands of actual social interaction. That companionship follows a carefully choreographed path throughout these 2.5 hours. One that your brain recognizes even if you don't consciously notice it. Have you ever wondered why random Rick and Morty clips might actually keep you awake, while this compilation consistently guides you towards sleep? The secret lies in its invisible narrative structure that mirrors your brain's natural journey from wakefulness to dreams. Unlike typical content compilations that randomly string together popular moments, this sleep aid is meticulously designed as a 3-act narrative that gradually reduces cognitive engagement while maintaining just enough interest to quiet your busy mind. Most viewers don't realize they're experiencing a carefully constructed descent into sleepiness. The compilations sequence isn't based on chronology or popularity, but follows the natural cycles of pre-sleep brain activity. Randomly selected scenes, no matter how individually calming, can inadvertently spike your attention at the wrong moments. We've all experienced that frustrating jolt of wakefulness just as we're about to drift off, whether from a sudden sound change or an unexpected plot development. This compilation eliminates those disruptions by adhering to sleep science principles, ensuring each transition feels natural to your gradually slowing thought processes. The first 30 minutes serve as the engagement phase, featuring slightly more dynamic scenes to capture your initial attention. This opening section includes short philosophical exchanges between Rick and Morty that engage your intellect without overwhelming it. You'll find moderately paced conversations like Rick explaining the multiverse while working on a project, or Morty processing a recent adventure with just enough emotional content to be interesting but not stimulating. This section gently pulls you away from the day's concerns by redirecting your thoughts toward comfortable, familiar territory without demanding full alertness. What makes this opening sequence particularly effective is how it balances cognitive engagement with emotional comfort. The scenes selected feature the characters' distinctive voices and personalities, but avoid complex plot developments or high-stakes situations. Instead of Rick's frantic adventures or manic outbursts, you'll experience his measured explanations of scientific concepts. Rather than Morty's panicked reactions to danger, you'll hear his thoughtful reflections on recent events. This creates the perfect entry point, interesting enough to distract you from daily worries, but measured enough to begin slowing your mental processes. The middle hour transitions to what sleep researchers might call the processing phase of pre-sleep. This section features longer, more philosophical conversations with reduced emotional stakes. The scenes selected for this middle portion favor the characters' contemplative moments, Rick working silently in the garage with occasional insights about existence, or Morty sharing observations about their adventures with a reflective tone. The scene transitions become more gradual, with longer pauses between dialogue exchanges. This middle section mirrors how your brain naturally processes the day's events before sleep, allowing thoughts to surface and resolve without urgency. What's fascinating about this middle section is how it gradually introduces more frequent moments of silence. The sound editors have carefully preserved natural pauses in conversations while slightly extending them, creating pockets of quietude that prepare your brain for deeper relaxation. You'll notice scenes where Rick and Morty sit together without speaking, or where background sounds like the garage tools or kitchen noises create a consistent audio environment without demanding attention. These extended silences would feel awkward in normal viewing but become increasingly comfortable as you progress towards sleep. The compilation's final hour represents the surrender phase, featuring the most minimal scenes with the longest pauses and simplest emotional content. This section includes moments where characters engage in routine activities with little dialogue. Rick organizing his workbench while occasionally commenting on his tools, Morty reading quietly with only occasional murmured reactions, or scenes of the Smith family's home at night with distant conversation. The audio engineering becomes increasingly important here, with dialogue volume maintaining consistency while background elements fade further into the distance. By the compilation's final 30 minutes, the scene selection becomes almost dreamlike, with disconnected moments of quiet reflection that don't require sequential understanding. The emotional complexity diminishes to its simplest form: basic comfort, mild curiosity, and gentle familiarity. This mirrors your brain's natural descent into the hypnagogic state where logical connections begin to dissolve. Scenes might include Rick and Morty stargazing with minimal commentary, or quiet moments in the ship during space travel, with only occasional soft beeps from the console punctuating the silence. Throughout the entire compilation, certain themes and elements recur at strategic intervals, creating a sense of security and predictability. The garage appears regularly as a location, providing a familiar setting that feels safe and contained. Certain phrases or concepts might be revisited from different angles, creating a sense of gentle circular thinking rather than forward momentum. This repetition serves an important psychological purpose. It signals to your brain that nothing new or threatening requires alertness, allowing deeper relaxation with each familiar element. Equally important is what the compilation deliberately avoids. You won't find cliffhangers or unresolved narrative tension that might keep your mind working to solve a problem. Scenes are selected to feel complete in themselves, offering small moments of resolution rather than hooks for continued engagement. The compilation also carefully avoids Rick's catchphrases or signature outbursts that might trigger associations with the show's more energetic moments. Even character appearances are regulated, with more agitating personalities like Evil Morty or the galactic government officials notably absent from the later sections. What makes this approach uniquely effective compared to traditional sleep aids is how it mirrors the natural process of falling asleep. Your brain doesn't simply switch off, but gradually transitions through distinct phases of decreasing cognitive activity. The compilation's three-part structure honors this natural progression, providing appropriate stimulation for each phase of pre-sleep consciousness. The early engagement captures wandering thoughts, the middle processing allows for reflection, and the final surrender creates space for consciousness to recede naturally. The narrative structure also creates a subtle psychological safety net. By establishing a predictable pattern of decreasing intensity, your brain learns to trust the compilation, allowing deeper relaxation with each passing minute. This earned trust is crucial for effective sleep aids. Your mind needs to feel secure enough to release vigilance. As you become familiar with the compilation through repeated use, this effect strengthens, with many users reporting faster sleep onset with each subsequent experience. Sleep researchers have noted that the transition to sleep requires a gradual disengagement from active processing. Traditional meditation apps attempt this through guided instruction, while white noise machines offer consistent sound without narrative. This compilation uniquely combines elements of both approaches, providing enough narrative content to occupy active thought processes while gradually reducing their demands until only passive awareness remains. It's this balanced approach that makes it so effective for people who find traditional sleep aids either boring or insufficient. This balanced approach reveals something that many casual viewers miss entirely. Beneath Rick and Morty's cynical exterior beats a surprisingly vulnerable heart. What if the show's most powerful sleep aid isn't its scientific concepts or cosmic adventures, but those rare moments when characters drop their emotional shields and reveal genuine connection? The scenes where Rick's facade cracks to show real love for his family might be doing more than just advancing the plot. They're creating the psychological safety your brain craves before surrender to sleep. When we think of Rick and Morty, most people immediately picture interdimensional escapades, absurdist humor, and Rick's constant reminders about the meaninglessness of existence. But scattered throughout the series are moments of unexpected tenderness that stand in stark contrast to the show's nihilistic reputation. These emotional beats don't just humanize the characters. They transform the viewing experience into something uniquely comforting, especially when experienced during that vulnerable transition toward sleep. Take the scene from Richternal Friendshine of the Spotless Mort, where Rick enters Bird Person's consciousness and encounters a memory of himself from decades earlier. As the two Ricks converse, present-day Rick admits something profound. "I'm less alone in the universe than I was when you knew me." It's a quietly devastating admission from a character who typically treats vulnerability like a weakness. The moment passes quickly, but it leaves a lingering resonance that feels almost meditative when included in a sleep compilation. In the Rick, Churi, and Morty date, we witness one of the most honest exchanges between Rick and Beth when she asks if she's really his daughter. Instead of his usual deflection or cynical one-liner, Rick simply responds, "You are the daughter of Rick Sanchez, and that's as certain as anything in this reality." The gentleness in his delivery creates a moment of emotional safety that's particularly effective when transitioning towards sleep. It's as though the characters are granting permission to lower our own defenses. Some of the compilation's most soothing segments come from autoerotic assimilation, not from the episode's more dramatic scenes, but from the quiet aftermath. When Rick silently works on a device in his garage following his breakup with Unity, the subtle sound design, the soft clicking of tools, his measured breathing, creates a soundscape that mirrors the gentle rhythm of pre-sleep relaxation. The scene cultivates a sense of processing emotion rather than avoiding it, showing that even the most chaotic mind eventually finds moments of quiet. The surprisingly tender dynamic between Rick and his granddaughter Summer offers another emotional anchor point. In the whirly-durly conspiracy, rather than dismissing Summer's insecurities about her appearance, Rick helps her understand that self-modification isn't the answer. Summer, your opinion of yourself is just an electronic chemical impulse in your brain, told from a limited perspective, he explains, his voice notably softer than usual. It's a moment of genuine compassion disguised as scientific detachment, and the gentleness of the exchange makes it perfect for a sleep aid compilation. What makes these tender moments particularly effective for sleep induction is how they often follow the resolution of adventures. In Morty's Mind Blowers, after the chaotic events of the episode, we see Rick and Morty simply sitting on the couch together, having forgotten the turmoil they just experienced. Their shared silence, punctuated only by the sounds of the television and occasional breathing, creates a natural wind-down that mirrors how our own minds process the day's events before sleep. The scene uses minimal dialogue, allowing viewers to simply exist. Alongside the characters in a state of quiet companionship, even Jerry, often the butt of the show's jokes, receives moments of genuine empathy. In The ABCs of Beth, when Jerry admits his feelings of inadequacy compared to Beth, Rick doesn't mock him as expected. Instead, there's a brief acknowledgement of Jerry's humanity that shifts the show's typical dynamic. These unexpected reversals of character behavior create a sense of emotional resolution that's particularly conducive to relaxation. They satisfy our brain's desire for narrative completion before sleep. The compilation also features scenes from Rick Potion Number 9, where, after causing an apocalypse, Rick and Morty relocate to a reality where alternate versions of themselves have died. As they bury their own bodies in the backyard, Rick offers no scientific explanation or sarcastic comment. He simply sits with Morty in shared silence. The sound design here is minimal, just the ambient noise of a suburban backyard and distant birds, creating an audio environment that gently envelops the listener without demanding attention. This scene demonstrates how the show's most emotionally resonant moments often rely on what's not said. It's worth noting how these tender scenes utilize space and silence differently than the show's more frenetic sequences. In The Wedding Squanchers, when Rick sacrifices himself to the Galactic Federation to protect his family, the long pause before he says goodbye to Morty creates an emotional weight that transcends the sci-fi setting. The audio compilation preserves these crucial silences, allowing listeners to process the emotional content at their own pace, a key component of effective sleep aids. The episode Rest and Ricklaxation offers another example of emotional vulnerability when Rick and Morty's toxins are removed. While played for laughs, the scene where Toxic Rick admits he actually loves Morty reveals the deep attachment beneath their dysfunctional relationship. The quieter, more measured dialogue exchange creates a rhythm that gently guides listeners toward a more relaxed state, demonstrating how even the show's conceptual episodes contain moments of genuine connection. Perhaps the most surprisingly effective scenes come from the Vat of Acid episode, particularly the montage where Morty falls in love while Rick waits patiently. The gentle score and minimal dialogue create a pace that's hypnotic rather than engaging, allowing the emotional content to wash over listeners rather than demand their attention. When Jerry later asks Rick why he waited for Morty, Rick's uncharacteristically patient explanation reveals a depth of care that contradicts his usual selfish persona. These tender moments share a common quality. They temporarily suspend the show's frenetic energy and cynical worldview to allow for authentic human connection. Whether it's Rick admitting his loneliness, Morty processing grief, or even just family members acknowledging each other's pain, these scenes create emotional resolution that satisfies our brain's need for narrative completion before sleep. The careful audio engineering of the compilation enhances these moments, preserving their emotional integrity while softening any elements that might disrupt relaxation. It's in the aftermath of adventure that Rick and Morty often reveals its emotional core. In Pickle Rick, following the absurdity of Rick's cucumber transformation, we get the therapy session where Dr. Wong calmly observes that the thing about repairing, maintaining, and cleaning is that it's not an adventure. This quiet moment of insight serves as both character development and a perfect metaphor for sleep itself. the necessary maintenance our minds require after adventure. The measured cadence of these conversational scenes creates a rhythm that naturally guides listeners toward relaxation. Sleep experts typically recommend gentle nature sounds or monotonous white noise to help us drift off. Yet thousands find themselves falling asleep to the adventures of a nihilistic scientist and his anxious grandson instead. What is it about these dysfunctional characters that creates such a powerfully soothing effect when traditional sleep aids fail? The contradiction seems obvious. Rick and Morty is renowned for its frenetic pacing, existential dread, and complex sci-fi concepts, making it appear to be the last thing anyone would use to fall asleep. Yet this compilation has found remarkable success precisely because it challenges our assumptions about what makes effective sleep content. Traditional sleep aids often lack the emotional connection that keeps our minds from wandering back to daily stressors. When we listen to generic white noise or nature sounds, there's nothing to anchor our attention, leaving plenty of mental space for worries about tomorrow's meeting or that embarrassing thing we said 5 years ago. Rick and Morty, on the other hand, provides just enough cognitive engagement to distract from anxious thoughts without demanding the full attention that would keep us awake. One viewer commented on the original compilation, "I've tried meditation apps, rain sounds, even prescription sleep aids. Nothing works like falling asleep to Rick explaining multiverse theory to Morty." Another noted, "There's something weirdly comforting about Rick's cynicism. It makes my own problems seem less significant when I'm trying to sleep." These testimonials reflect a common thread. The show creates an emotional bridge that many formal sleep aids simply cannot replicate. Perhaps most surprising is how the show's existential themes actually contribute to its effectiveness as a sleep aid. When Rick casually mentions that nobody exists on purpose, nobody belongs anywhere, everybody's gonna die, it's not just nihilism. It's a strangely comforting reminder that our day-to-day concerns are microscopic in the grand cosmic scheme. This perspective shift helps viewers release the grip of immediate worries that often prevent sleep. The philosophical undertones create a mental environment where perfection isn't expected and failure isn't catastrophic. Exactly the mindset conducive to letting go of consciousness. The compilation's success also stems from its character-driven approach, rather than plot-focused content. Plot-heavy narratives demand attention and create tension. We need to know what happens next. But in this sleep aid, the focus shifts to character moments and conversations that don't require viewers to follow complex storylines. We're not invested in what will happen, but rather in witnessing familiar characters express themselves in ways we've come to appreciate. This distinction is crucial for sleep content, as it removes the forward momentum that keeps minds alert. Many users report that the familiarity of the characters' voices creates a sense of companionship that addresses the fundamental loneliness many people experience at night. One viewer described it as like having friends in the room talking about interesting stuff without expecting me to participate. This parasocial comfort mimics the evolutionary safety of sleeping in a group while maintaining the quiet needed for rest. The brain registers these familiar voices as signs of security, allowing the vigilant systems to relax. The unconventional sleep aid also benefits from the show's unique dialogue patterns. Unlike the intentionally monotonous delivery of guided meditations, Rick and Morty features natural speech rhythms with subtle variations in pace, pitch, and emotion. These organic vocal patterns more closely resemble real-life conversation, which many find more engaging yet ultimately more conducive to sleep than artificially. Smooth narration. The brain doesn't need to work as hard to process these familiar speech patterns, allowing for a gentler transition to sleep. Cognitive psychologists suggest that moderate mental engagement before sleep can actually enhance relaxation by preventing the mind from generating its own stimulation through worry or rumination. The compilation provides just that, enough conceptual material to occupy the conscious mind without overwhelming it. When Rick muses about the nature of existence or Morty questions his place in the universe, these philosophical threads offer enough substance to follow without requiring active problem-solving or emotional investment. Additionally, many users find that the show's dark humor provides small moments of pleasure that improve overall mood before sleep. Rather than creating excitement that would hinder rest, These brief moments of amusement act as minor dopamine releases that contribute to a general sense of well-being. This positive association helps counter the negative thought patterns that often emerge in the pre-sleep period, especially for those who struggle with anxiety or depression. The compilation also demonstrates remarkable awareness of pacing. In the early sections, viewers get slightly more engaging content that captures attention away from the day's stresses. As the compilation progresses, the scenes become increasingly reflective, and the gaps between dialogue grow longer. This mirrors the natural winding-down process of healthy sleep onset, where thoughts become less connected and more abstract as consciousness fades. Unlike streaming an unmodified episode, which might suddenly increase in intensity, this careful curation ensures a consistent drift toward calm. Perhaps most importantly, the compilation taps into something many traditional sleep aids miss entirely: the profound comfort of shared human experience. When Rick admits vulnerability or Morty questions the nature of happiness, viewers recognize their own struggles reflected back at them. This recognition creates a sense of being understood that many find deeply soothing. In the isolation of night, this connection, even to animated characters, provides a psychological holding environment that facilitates the surrender to sleep. The compilation also benefits from featuring characters who maintain consistent personalities despite chaotic circumstances. While the show's plots may be unpredictable, Rick remains recognizably Rick and Morty remains Morty. This consistency provides a cognitive anchor in a way that generic sounds or unfamiliar narrators cannot. The brain expends less energy processing who is speaking and can instead focus on the soothing qualities of their familiar voices. Counterintuitively, the show's occasional cosmic horror elements may also contribute to its effectiveness as a sleep aid. By presenting existential threats that are so far beyond everyday concerns, the compilation creates a form of exposure therapy that helps viewers put their own worries in perspective. The contrast between interdimensional catastrophe and mundane human worries creates a cognitive shift that many find liberating before sleep. If Rick can shrug off the collapse of civilization, perhaps we can temporarily set aside our anxiety about tomorrow's presentation. The compilation's effectiveness ultimately stems from this central paradox. What makes Rick and Morty seem unsuitable for sleep is precisely what allows it to succeed where traditional methods fail. It engages the mind just enough to prevent anxious spiraling while gradually reducing stimulation to guide viewers towards sleep. It offers philosophical depth that provides perspective on daily worries without demanding resolution. It presents familiar characters whose voices create comfort without requiring active social engagement. Did you know that certain types of animation can actually help your brain transition to sleep mode? It seems counterintuitive that a show like Rick and Morty could help you doze off. When we think of Rick and Morty, we typically imagine the fast-paced adventures, wild scientific concepts, and often chaotic energy that defines most episodes. But beneath all that frantic animation exists a surprising potential for relaxation when the right scenes are selected and presented in specific ways. Animation has some unique properties that can influence our brainwaves in ways that live-action content simply can't. The stylized visuals create a slight separation from reality that can actually help our minds detach from daily stressors. The consistent art style provides a visual predictability that our brains find comforting. We know exactly what Rick's garage looks like, how the Smith family's living room is arranged, and the familiar color schemes of recurring locations. This visual consistency sends signals to our brain that we're in a safe, known environment. Perfect conditions for winding down. Most people would argue that Rick and Morty is too chaotic and stimulating to possibly help with sleep, but that's not always the case. While the show is famous for its rapid-fire dialogue and dimension-hopping mayhem, it also contains plenty of quieter moments that get overshadowed by the more memorable high-energy scenes. Think about Rick silently tinkering in his garage, or those still moments when characters are simply gazing at alien skies. These scenes exist throughout the series but rarely make it into highlight reels or fan compilations. The show actually features a wide range of visual environments beyond just the high-energy adventures. There are peaceful alien landscapes with gently swaying alien flora, quiet domestic moments in the Smith household, and even serene space sequences where characters float in the vastness of the cosmos. These varied settings provide perfect material for a sleep aid when isolated from the more intense content surrounding them. What many viewers don't realize is that Rick and Morty's animation style actually shifts depending on the emotional tone of a scene. The more relaxed moments often feature smoother animation with fewer rapid cuts and slower camera movements. The character movements become more deliberate and less frantic. These subtle animation choices subconsciously signal to our brains that it's time to calm down, making these scenes particularly well-suited for pre-sleep viewing. Research on sleep psychology reveals something fascinating about familiar content. It can actually reduce anxiety because our brains don't need to process new information, making it easier to wind down. When we watch something we've seen before, our brains aren't working as hard to follow new plot developments or understand unfamiliar characters. For fans of Rick and Morty, seeing these familiar characters in their familiar environments creates a sense of comfort and predictability that's conducive to relaxation. The color theory behind Rick and Morty's visual design plays an important role too. While the show is known for its vivid alien worlds with bright greens and pinks, it also features many scenes with a distinct color palette that uses blues and purples, colors that research has shown can promote relaxation and sleepiness. The cool tones found in space scenes, nighttime sequences, and several alien environments trigger physiological responses associated with calmness. Our brains interpret these colors as signals that it's time to rest, similar to how we respond to the blue light of evening. The animation techniques used in the show's quieter moments also contribute to their sleep-inducing potential. Scenes with slower pacing often employ gentler transitions between shots, more static frames, and minimalist animation where only essential elements move. These techniques reduce visual stimulation and give our eyes and brain less information to process, allowing us to gradually disengage our active attention, exactly what we need when trying to fall asleep. The sound design of these calmer moments is equally important. The show's quieter scenes often feature ambient background sounds instead of the typical fast-paced music and chaotic sound effects. This audio backdrop creates a consistent, predictable soundscape that our brains find soothing. When isolated from the louder segments, these audio elements can function similarly to white noise machines many people use for sleep. The compilation we've created specifically avoids high-intensity scenes and focuses on the more measured, calm moments from the series. We've meticulously selected scenes where the pacing slows down, the colors shift to cooler tones, and the sound design becomes more ambient. By stringing these moments together, we've created a viewing experience that maintains the familiar comfort of Rick and Morty while eliminating the elements that might keep you awake. Our editing approach also plays a crucial role in transforming this typically energetic show into a sleep aid. We've extended certain scenes beyond their original length, allowing moments that were originally brief to breathe and develop a hypnotic quality. We've smoothed transitions between scenes to avoid jarring shifts, and we've carefully balanced the audio to eliminate sudden volume changes that might startle you just as you're drifting off. What makes this compilation particularly effective is how we've arranged the content to mimic the natural process of falling asleep. The earlier segments feature slightly more engaging content with a bit more dialogue and character interaction. As the compilation progresses, we gradually reduce the complexity, dialogue frequency, and visual stimulation, guiding viewers toward deeper relaxation in a way that feels natural rather than forced. The science of visual processing explains why animation can sometimes work better than live action for sleep purposes. Animation provides clear visual distinctions between elements, reducing the processing demand on our visual cortex. The simplified forms and consistent character designs require less mental effort to recognize and track, allowing parts of our brain to begin powering down while we're still casually watching. This Rick and Morty sleep aid actually helps you fall asleep by leveraging animation science and carefully selected scenes that promote relaxation. The familiar characters provide emotional comfort, the consistent visual style offers predictability, and the selected scenes feature the optimal color palettes, pacing, and sound design to guide you towards sleep. What begins as casual viewing gradually transforms into a background presence that gently accompanies you as you drift off. As we explore the compilation, you'll discover how we've structured it to gradually decrease stimulation over the 2.5 hours. The beginning offers more conventional Rick and Morty moments, still calm, but with enough familiarity to draw you in. The middle sections transition to increasingly peaceful scenes with less dialogue and more ambient sound. By the final segments, you'll find extended sequences of gentle animation with minimal narrative demands, perfect for the moments just before sleep takes over. Our compilation begins with the character you'd least expect to help you fall asleep. While Rick typically embodies frantic energy, we've discovered a hidden dimension to his character, moments where the cosmic vastness seems to humble even him into philosophical silence. These scenes, where starlight reflects in his eyes and his usual rapid speech slows to a thoughtful murmur, create a surprisingly effective pathway to relaxation. The genius of starting with Rick's calmer moments is that they provide a gentle transition from wakefulness into the beginning stages of relaxation. We're used to seeing Rick as a tornado of movement and ideas, but throughout the series, the creators have given us glimpses of his contemplative side. These moments aren't just random pauses in the action. They're deliberately crafted scenes that showcase a different facet of his character, one that's perfect for our sleep aid purposes. Take the roof-gazing scene we've prominently featured in the opening segment. Here, Rick sits quietly under a vast cosmic sky, the animation slowing to match his thoughtful mood. The cosmic backgrounds in this scene use a palette of deep blues and purples that naturally signal to your brain that it's time to wind down. What makes this sequence particularly effective is how the stars themselves become almost hypnotic. Tiny points of light against the darkness, moving so slowly that they create a visual equivalent to counting sheep. When Rick observes the vastness of space in these moments, there's a quality to the animation that's fundamentally different from the show's typical style. The frenetic camera movements give way to steady, slow pans. The rapid-fire editing slows to longer, more lingering shots. Even the background details become more minimal, removing the visual stimulation that typically keeps your brain engaged and alert. These artistic choices weren't made with sleep in mind, but they work perfectly for our compilation. But the visual elements are only part of what makes these Rick scenes so effective. There's something particularly soothing about Rick's voice during these contemplative moments. Justin Roiland, who voices Rick, drops the character's voice to a lower register and removes much of the stammering and burping that characterize his more energetic scenes. This creates what sleep experts would recognize as a consistent audio pattern, the kind that helps lull listeners toward drowsiness rather than jolting them awake with unexpected sounds. We've arranged these quieter Rick moments in a specific sequence over the first 30 minutes of our compilation. The earlier scenes still contain some of Rick's trademark wit and insight, but as this segment progresses, we've selected clips with progressively less dialogue and more ambient sound. By the end of Rick's section, you'll find scenes where he's simply tinkering in his garage, the gentle clinking of tools creating a rhythmic soundscape that's perfect for beginning the transition to deeper relaxation. What's particularly interesting about these scenes is how they reveal emotional aspects of Rick's character that are easy to miss when focusing on the show's more comedic elements. The animation team clearly puts special care into these moments, using subtle facial expressions and body language to convey Rick's inner state without relying on dialogue. His usual manic energy transforms into something more measured and deliberate, and the emotional depth they achieve actually enhances the relaxation factor rather than diminishing it. One standout example comes from Rick's garage workshop. Scenes. While typically depicted as chaotic environments full of dangerous experiments, we've found sequences where Rick works with a methodical precision that's almost meditative. The animation in these moments often focuses on his hands as they perform delicate adjustments to his inventions, creating a visual rhythm that's surprisingly hypnotic. The consistent lighting in these garage scenes, usually a soft blue from his equipment, adds to the calming effect. It's worth noting that these contemplative Rick moments are quite rare in the overall series. The show typically emphasizes his chaotic nature, which is why these quieter scenes feel so special when they appear. By collecting them into a continuous sequence, we've created something that even dedicated fans may not have experienced before, a portrait of Rick as a figure of tranquility rather than turmoil. This novelty actually helps with the sleep aid function, as it gives your brain something interesting to focus on without being so unfamiliar that it demands full attention. The emotional undertones of these scenes also contribute to their effectiveness as sleep aid content. When Rick gazes at the stars or sits quietly reflecting, there's often a subtle melancholy to these moments. Not depressing, but thoughtful in a way that acknowledges the beauty and brevity of existence. This emotional quality creates a different kind of engagement than the show's humor or action, one that allows viewers to process their own thoughts and feelings without requiring active mental participation. We've paid particular attention to the transitions between these Rick scenes, using the cosmic backgrounds as connecting tissue. The vastness of space, with its natural darkness punctuated by distant lights, mimics what your eyes might see as they close for sleep. The slow movement of stars and nebulae creates a natural visual lullaby that bridges between different moments without disrupting the growing sense of tranquility. As this first segment of our compilation progresses, you'll notice that we've carefully managed the audio elements as well. The earlier scenes include Rick's philosophical musings, delivered in that measured, almost hypnotic cadence that's so different from his usual rapid-fire speech. But as we move deeper into the sequence, his dialogue becomes more sparse, eventually giving way to scenes where ambient sounds predominate. The gentle hum of his garage equipment, the subtle background noises of a peaceful night, the faint sounds of breathing that establish a subconscious rhythm. The color palette throughout this segment deserves special mention. We've specifically chosen scenes that utilize the cooler end of the spectrum. Deep blues, purples, and gentle greens that research has shown can actually lower heart rate and blood pressure. These aren't just visually pleasing. They're scientifically proven to promote the physical conditions that lead to drowsiness. The cosmic backgrounds, with their gradient shifts between these calming colors, create a visual environment that signals to your body that it's time to power down. By the time you reach the end of Rick's 30-minute section, you'll likely find your eyelids growing heavier. This is exactly as planned. We've structured this opening segment to guide you gently into the first stages of drowsiness, using the character you'd least expect as your guide into dreamland. And just as your consciousness begins to drift, we'll transition away from Rick toward characters with naturally more soothing presences, continuing the journey deeper into relaxation. Just as your consciousness drifts with Rick's calming presence, Morty waits to continue your journey, not with his trademark anxiety, but with moments of pure cosmic wonder. The character most associated with constant panic actually provides your perfect companion for the middle stages of falling asleep, offering a seamless transition deeper into relaxation. While we typically remember Morty for his high-pitched screams and nervous energy, our compilation deliberately showcases his lesser-known meditative side. These carefully selected scenes reveal a character who, when given space to breathe, experiences the universe with a sense of awe that translates perfectly to our sleep aid purpose. Morty's wide-eyed wonder becomes our window into some of the show's most visually stunning and peaceful environments. The 25-minute Morty segment doesn't try to erase his anxious personality. It simply highlights the natural counterbalance that exists within his character. These quieter moments where Morty absorbs the beauty around him provide the perfect bridge between Rick's contemplative scenes and the even gentler character segments to follow. When stripped of constant danger, Morty's natural sensitivity transforms from a source of comedy into something genuinely soothing. Perhaps the most striking sequence in this segment comes from The Ricks Must Be Crazy, where Morty lies in an alien field gazing up at unfamiliar constellations. This scene exemplifies everything that makes our compilation effective. The breathtaking cosmic background creates an atmosphere of tranquility rather than chaos. The camera lingers on Morty's peaceful expression as he takes in the majesty above him, creating a moment where time seems to slow down naturally. The visual language of these Morty segments speaks directly to your subconscious. Gone are the rapid cuts and frenetic movements that characterize the show's more exciting sequences. Instead, we've prioritized scenes with gentle camera movement, slow pans across alien landscapes that allow your eyes to wander without demanding they dart from point to point. The gradual transitions between scenes mirror the natural slowing of thought processes as you drift towards sleep. Our compilation team paid particular attention to the color composition within Morty's segments. These sequences feature some of the show's most immersive alien environments, with palettes dominated by gentle gradients rather than sharp contrasts. The scenes transition through cool blues and purples into soft greens and teals, colors that naturally signal to your brain that it's time to relax. The animation itself becomes more fluid and less demanding, requiring minimal mental processing as you progress deeper into drowsiness. What makes these Morty moments especially effective is their underlying emotional quality. When allowed to simply exist in alien environments without immediate threats, Morty embodies a childlike appreciation for beauty that resonates with viewers on a primal level. This genuine wonder creates an emotional safe space, a reminder that the universe contains peaceful moments even amid chaos. For viewers trying to quiet an active mind, Morty's ability to stop and appreciate beauty serves as a gentle reminder to do the same. The audio engineering in Morty's segment builds upon the foundation established in Rick's portion, taking you deeper into relaxation. We've meticulously adjusted sound levels to emphasize the ambient background elements, the soft rustle of alien grass, the distant calls of strange creatures, the gentle hum of cosmic energy. Dialogue has been carefully balanced to avoid startling volume changes, and Morty's voice itself becomes a soothing element rather than a source of tension. Another standout sequence shows Morty floating peacefully in the vastness of space, temporarily free from Earth's gravity and concerns. The visual emptiness of space combined with the character's rare moment of calm creates a perfect environment for mental decompression. The minimal background elements allow your brain to stop processing complex visual information, while the slow movement of Morty's body through the void creates a naturally hypnotic effect. The curation process for Morty's segments required reviewing hundreds of scenes to identify moments where his typically anxious energy gives way to something more contemplative. What emerges is a surprisingly cohesive portrait of a character capable of profound tranquility when given the opportunity. These scenes don't contradict Morty's established personality. They reveal its hidden dimensions, showing how even the show's most nervous character contains multitudes. Our editing approach for this segment deliberately extends certain moments beyond their original duration. A 5-second glance at an alien sunset in the original episode might be expanded to 30 seconds in our compilation, allowing the visual beauty to fully register and work its calming magic. This technique creates a hypnotic quality that wasn't present in the original pacing, turning brief moments of beauty into extended opportunities for relaxation. The Morty section's strategic placement within the overall compilation is no accident. Coming after Rick's segment, it continues the gradual decrease in stimulation while maintaining just enough narrative engagement to occupy your conscious mind. By this point in the viewing experience, you're likely already experiencing the first stages of drowsiness, and Morty's quieter energy helps guide you deeper rather than pulling you back to alertness. What's particularly interesting about these scenes is how they recontextualize Morty's character. Without the immediate pressure of adventure, his sensitivity, often played for laughs in the show, becomes his greatest strength. The very quality that makes him anxious in dangerous situations allows him to fully appreciate beauty when given the chance to relax. This emotional authenticity creates a connection that generic sleep aids simply cannot match. The compilation includes select moments from multiple seasons, showing that this side of Morty has been consistent throughout the series, even as his character has evolved in other ways. By isolating these moments and presenting them in sequence, we create a version of Morty that feels both familiar to fans and perfectly suited to our sleep aid purpose. The character you thought you knew reveals himself to be an ideal companion for the middle stages of your journey toward sleep. As we progress through Morty's segment, you'll notice the scenes becoming progressively more ambient and less narrative-driven. Early moments might include brief reflective dialogue, while later sequences focus almost exclusively on Morty silently experiencing alien environments. This deliberate progression mirrors the natural transition from light drowsiness to deeper relaxation, guiding you further away from active thought and closer to sleep. From the infinite possibilities of alien worlds, we now retreat to the familiar comfort of the Smith household, where Beth and Jerry's ordinary routines create an entirely different kind of sleep-inducing environment. These domestic scenes, often dismissed by fans as filler between adventures, might actually be the secret weapon in our sleep aid arsenal, precisely because nothing particularly exciting happens in them. While the cosmic spectacles of Rick and Morty captivate our conscious minds, it's the mundane moments that gently escort us into dreamland. The strategic selection of Beth and Jerry scenes forms a crucial bridge in our journey towards sleep. After experiencing the wonder of cosmic exploration with Morty, our brains benefit from a downshift to the everyday. This is where Beth and Jerry excel. Their household moments require minimal mental processing, allowing your thoughts to gradually slow down as sleep approaches. Think about how we naturally wind down at night. Rarely do we shift directly from intense activity to sleep. Instead, we transition through increasingly relaxed states, which is exactly what these domestic scenes facilitate. The Smith household contains a specific kind of comfort that's particularly conducive to relaxation. Unlike the unpredictable alien environments that demand our full attention, Beth and Jerry's kitchen, living room, and dining area remain consistent. Your brain doesn't need to work overtime mapping new surroundings or anticipating dangers. This visual constancy creates a sense of safety that's fundamental to the sleep process. When your subconscious recognizes familiar environments, it's more willing to let down its guard and allow deeper relaxation to take hold. What makes these scenes particularly effective is their deliberate lack of narrative urgency. In one extended sequence, we simply observe Beth and Jerry sharing a quiet dinner with minimal dialogue and absolutely no interdimensional threats. The camera lingers on ordinary moments, Jerry passing the salt, Beth sipping her wine, the gentle clinking of silverware against plates. These actions require almost no mental engagement to process, creating the perfect viewing experience for someone who's ready to drift off but needs just enough stimulation to quiet an active mind. The visual design of these domestic scenes plays a significant role in their sleep-inducing qualities. The Smith household consistently features warmer color palettes than other settings in the show. The yellows and oranges often seen in the kitchen and living room create a cozy, inviting atmosphere that physiologically signals safety to your brain. This visual warmth stands in direct contrast to the cool blues and electric greens of the sci-fi adventures, essentially telling your nervous system that it's safe to power down. The softer lighting in these home scenes further enhances this effect, with gentler shadows and fewer harsh highlights that might otherwise stimulate alertness. The pacing of these Beth and Jerry segments has been carefully calibrated within our compilation. We've selected scenes where the editing is noticeably slower, with fewer cuts and longer takes. This visual stability allows your eyes to rest more comfortably on the screen without the constant readjustment required by rapid scene changes. In one particularly effective sequence, the camera remains nearly stationary as Beth and Jerry watch television together, the only movement coming from their occasional shifting on the couch. This static quality mimics the natural slowing of visual processing that occurs as we approach sleep. Even the sound design of these domestic scenes contributes to their effectiveness as a sleep aid. The background audio of the Smith household, the subtle hum of appliances, distant neighborhood sounds, or the low murmur of their television, creates a consistent audio foundation that many find deeply relaxing. These ambient sounds are similar to the white noise machines many people use to fall asleep, providing just enough audio stimulation to mask potentially disruptive sounds without demanding attention. The dialogue in these scenes has been specifically selected for its measured pacing and lower emotional intensity, avoiding the sudden vocal spikes that might jolt you back to alertness. What's particularly fascinating about using these Beth and Jerry moments is how they represent the parts of the show that fans might typically overlook or even skip during normal viewing. In our sleep aid context, however, their very boringness becomes their superpower. The scenes where very little happens, Jerry reading a newspaper while Beth waters plants, for instance, are precisely the ones that allow your brain to gradually disengage. They provide just enough narrative continuity to prevent boredom, which can actually be stimulating, while requiring minimal cognitive resources to process. The compilation includes several extended scenes that have been deliberately paced to reduce mental stimulation as you progress towards sleep. In one sequence, we observe Beth and Jerry having a calm conversation about everyday matters. No interdimensional crisis, no family drama, just normal discussion about household topics. The camera work remains steady, the lighting consistent, and the emotional tenor remarkably even. This stability creates a perfect environment for your thoughts to gradually slow and your consciousness to begin its natural drift toward sleep. The placement of these Beth and Jerry scenes within the overall structure of our compilation is strategically important. Their 30-minute segment appears after the more engaging Rick and Morty sections but before the even more ambient later portions. This positioning creates a perfect middle ground in the sleep journey. Not so stimulating that it keeps you alert, but not so boring that your mind might actually rebel and become more active. The domestic tranquility serves as a crucial transition point, guiding you from mild engagement toward deeper relaxation. Some of the most effective moments in this segment come from scenes that focus on routine and repetition. In one extended sequence, we watch Jerry methodically preparing coffee in the morning, with the camera lingering on the pour of water and the drip of coffee into the pot. These familiar, cyclical actions have an almost hypnotic quality when observed passively, similar to the calming effect of watching waves at the beach or flames in a fireplace. The predictability of these moments creates a rhythm that can help synchronize your breathing and heart rate to a more sleep-conducive pattern. The mundane quality of these scenes serves another important purpose. They don't create emotional or intellectual hooks that might keep your mind engaged. When watching a typical episode with a compelling plot, your brain naturally wants to follow the story to its conclusion. With these domestic scenes, there's no narrative tension to resolve, no mystery to solve, no conflict demanding resolution. This absence of narrative urgency allows your thoughts to wander and gradually disperse, a key step in the transition from wakefulness to sleep. What might surprise you is how these seemingly unremarkable moments can actually produce a sense of comfort that facilitates relaxation. There's something inherently soothing about observing normal, everyday life, particularly for viewers who may be dealing with stress or anxiety. The very ordinariness of Beth and Jerry's domestic routines provides a kind of psychological anchor, reminding us of the stable patterns that underlie even the most chaotic lives. This grounding effect can help quiet racing thoughts and create the mental space necessary for sleep to emerge. While the parents in the Smith family create that foundation of comforting domestic routine, Summer offers something uniquely conducive to sleep. Beyond her room's door lies a surprising treasure trove of meditative sequences that most viewers completely overlook during normal watching, but work wonders when you're trying to drift off. Summer might not get as much attention or screen time as Rick and Morty, but her quieter moments contain some of the most sleep-inducing visuals in the entire series. What makes Summer's scenes so effective for our compilation is their measured pacing and emotional steadiness. Unlike her grandfather's manic energy or her brother's anxious tendencies, Summer typically maintains a more balanced demeanor. This naturally creates footage that's perfect for our sleep aid purpose. Not too stimulating, not too boring, but just right for that middle section of our sleepy journey. You might wonder why we've dedicated a full 20 minutes to a character who often plays a supporting role in the series. The answer lies in the specific qualities of her scenes that make them surprisingly effective sleep inducers. We've carefully selected moments where Summer is engaged in low-stimulation activities, reading quietly in her room, listening to music with headphones, or simply relaxing on her bed staring at the ceiling. These ordinary activities create a perfect visual backdrop for relaxation because they're familiar without demanding much cognitive processing. The compilation highlights extended sequences from episodes like Total Recall and Ricksty Minutes, where Summer has these quiet, contemplative moments. These episodes already feature slower pacing and minimal conflict compared to the series' more adventure-heavy installments. When we isolate Summer's scenes from these episodes, we get content that's practically tailor-made for sleep induction. Thoughtful, measured, and visually consistent. Speaking of visual consistency, one of Summer's secret weapons as a sleep aid character is the remarkably stable color palette in her scenes. While Rick and Morty adventures often feature rapid shifts between vibrant alien environments, Summer's bedroom and personal spaces maintain consistent visual themes. This reduction in color variation becomes increasingly important as our compilation progresses toward deeper relaxation. Your brain doesn't have to work as hard to process these scenes, allowing you to ease closer to sleep with each passing minute. This visual stability is enhanced by our careful arrangement of Summer's scenes to create a gradual progression. We start with moments where she's more active, perhaps talking on the phone or interacting with family members, and slowly transition to increasingly passive scenes where she's simply existing in her space. This mirrors the natural winding down process your mind goes through as you prepare for sleep. The audio engineering for Summer's segment deserves special mention. We've meticulously balanced the sound levels throughout these scenes to eliminate any sudden volume changes that might jolt you back to alertness. The background music during Summer's contemplative moments has been subtly enhanced while dialogue is softened, creating an audio environment that cradles rather than challenges your senses. This careful audio treatment ensures your journey towards sleep continues uninterrupted. What's particularly effective about Summer's scenes is how they bridge the gap between the more active family moments we saw earlier and the even more ambient character segments to come. Her 20-minute portion arrives at precisely the right moment in our sleep journey, when you're beginning to feel genuinely drowsy, but aren't quite ready for the purely atmospheric content that comes later. Think of Summer as your guide through the middle stage of relaxation, helping you transition from mild engagement to deeper tranquility. As we progress through Summer's segment, you'll notice a subtle but important shift in the editing approach. Shots last longer, with fewer cuts between angles. This isn't accidental. It's a deliberate strategy to match your brain's gradually slowing thought patterns. In the early parts of our compilation, quicker cuts maintain engagement, but by the time we reach Summer, we want to encourage your mind to settle into longer, more meditative states. The editing rhythm becomes a visual lullaby, gently rocking you towards sleep. Let's look at a specific example that showcases Summer's sleep-inducing qualities. There's a sequence from Rick's Minutes where Summer spends several minutes simply contemplating her existence after discovering some uncomfortable truths about her parents' history. In the actual episode, this scene lasts perhaps 30 seconds, but we've extended it to nearly 2 minutes by slowing down certain movements and adding gentle transitions. The result is a hypnotic sequence where Summer's quiet contemplation becomes a perfect visual anchor for your own drifting thoughts. The careful selection of these scenes is a deliberate strategy to minimize any jarring or stimulating content. We've specifically avoided Summer's more dramatic moments. No arguments with her parents, no interdimensional adventures with Rick, none of her more emotionally charged scenes from later seasons. Instead, we focus exclusively on moments of quiet normalcy, creating a soothing continuity that helps maintain the relaxation state we've been building. Another fascinating aspect of Summer's segment is how it utilizes the character's room as a consistent visual environment. While the Smith household creates a foundation of familiar comfort, Summer's bedroom takes this a step further by providing an even more contained and personal space. The recurring visual elements, her bed, desk, posters on the wall, create a sense of place that your brain quickly recognizes, reducing the cognitive load required to process new visual information. This recognition allows your mind to relax more deeply as the compilation progresses. The sound design during Summer's scenes has been carefully constructed to minimize disruption. Unlike the family scenes where dialogue might occasionally spike in volume or energy, Summer's segments maintain a more consistent audio profile. Background sounds like the gentle hum of a fan or the distant murmur of household activity create a subtle audio backdrop that masks potential sleep-disrupting noises in your own environment. This audio consistency becomes increasingly important as you progress deeper into relaxation. What might surprise longtime fans is how these seemingly unremarkable Summer moments, when carefully assembled and sequenced, reveal a character whose presence is remarkably conducive to relaxation. While the show often positions Summer as the normal, sometimes sarcastic teenager reacting to the chaos around her, these quieter scenes highlight a contemplative quality that's perfect for our sleep aid purpose. Her moments of introspection create mental space for viewers to ease into their own relaxed state. As we approach the end of Summer's segment, the transition into the next character becomes almost imperceptible. The editing slows to a glacial pace, with some shots lasting nearly a minute with minimal movement or change. This extremely measured pacing prepares your brain for the even more ambient content to follow, creating a seamless journey deeper into the relaxation state necessary for sleep to emerge naturally. The measured pacing of Summer's final scenes transitions beautifully into the world of Bird Person, where time itself seems to slow to a meditative crawl. Bird Person may have limited screen time throughout the series, but there's something uniquely tranquilizing about his presence that makes him essential to our sleep compilation. His segments aren't just calm. They're methodically designed to induce a state of deep relaxation through his philosophical musings, delivered in that signature monotone voice that never wavers in pitch or intensity. Each Bird Person scene in our compilation has been carefully selected to maximize its sleep-inducing potential. We've focused primarily on moments where he explains aspects of his culture or shares his worldview, creating a consistent audio pattern that functions almost like a guided meditation. Unlike the show's more energetic characters, Bird Person never rushes his words or raises his voice. This steady, unbroken rhythm creates a hypnotic effect similar to what sleep therapists use to quiet active minds, only wrapped in the familiar package of a beloved character. What makes Bird Person particularly effective as a sleep aid is how the compilation presents his introspective dialogues without the action sequences that occasionally interrupt his screen time in the original episodes. These extended philosophical moments, freed from the tension of the show's main plot, create a viewing experience where you can simply float along with his thoughts. His voice maintains that perfect balance, interesting enough to distract your mind from anxious thoughts, yet measured enough that it doesn't stimulate your brain into alertness. The visual aspects of Bird World enhance this soporific effect significantly. While many locations in Rick and Morty feature sharp contrasts and bright, attention-grabbing elements, Bird World stands apart with its natural setting and earth-tone color palette. The environments showcase some of the show's most beautiful animation work, flowing backgrounds with gentle movements and gradual color transitions that don't demand your visual attention. These scenes feature fewer sharp movements or bright color changes that might stimulate your brain when you're trying to wind down. The color science behind Bird World's design is particularly noteworthy. The focus on blue, purple, and green hues creates a visual environment scientifically associated with relaxation and sleep. These colors don't just look calming. They actually trigger physiological responses that can help lower heart rate and prepare your body for rest. This calculated design approach transforms what might seem like simple background animation into a powerful tool for inducing drowsiness as you progress deeper into the compilation. Perhaps one of the most overlooked aspects of Bird Person's segments is the ambient soundscape. The natural sounds of Bird World, gentle winds, distant calls of avian inhabitants, and the subtle rustling of foliage create a consistent audio backdrop that masks potential sleep-disrupting noises in your environment. This ambient sound layer has been carefully balanced in our compilation, kept at just the right volume to be noticeable without overwhelming Bird Person's philosophical narration. The compilation structures Bird Person's 20-minute segment at a strategic point, appearing just when previous sections have already begun to relax your mind, but before the deepest sleep-inducing content. This placement is intentional, as his scenes strike the perfect balance between minimal narrative engagement and pure ambient content. By this point in the viewing experience, most people find their eyelids growing heavy as Bird Person's methodical speech patterns and the gentle visual flow of Bird World guide them closer to sleep. What's particularly fascinating about Bird Person's effectiveness as a sleep aid is how the character was never designed for this purpose. The show's creators developed him as a stoic warrior with a philosophical outlook, but in doing so, they accidentally created the perfect animated sleep therapist. His limited emotional range and minimal facial expressions reduce the visual stimulation that might keep your brain engaged, while his deep voice creates sound waves and frequencies associated with relaxation. The editing approach for Bird Person's segments further enhances the sleep-inducing qualities. While the original episodes might cut away from him after brief exchanges, our compilation extends these moments, allowing scenes to breathe with much longer takes. Some shots last nearly a full minute with minimal movement or dialogue, creating a hypnotic visual experience that mirrors the slowing thought patterns of someone drifting towards sleep. Even the animation style in Bird Person's scenes works to your advantage when trying to fall asleep. The flowing movements of his wings, feathers, and environment create a visual rhythm that's almost mesmerizing. Unlike the quick, erratic movements often associated with Rick and Morty's more chaotic sequences, Bird Person's world moves at a glacial pace, with gentle, predictable motion that your eyes can follow without requiring mental energy to process. The compilation makes effective use of Bird Person's home environment as well. The natural setting provides a consistent visual backdrop that reduces the cognitive load on your brain. You don't need to process new environments or try to understand unfamiliar settings. This visual consistency allows your mind to relax its vigilance, making it easier to transition from wakefulness to that crucial pre-sleep state where thoughts begin to drift and lose their sharp edges. For viewers familiar with meditation practices, Bird Person's segments might feel remarkably similar to guided relaxation techniques. His philosophical observations about life, death, and the universe share qualities with mindfulness instruction. They give your mind something to focus on without demanding active engagement. As he explains his culture's views on existence in that perfectly modulated monotone, your brain can engage just enough to prevent anxious thoughts while gradually powering down towards sleep. The audio engineering for Bird Person's segment deserves special mention. Throughout the compilation, we've carefully balanced the sound to eliminate any sudden volume changes that might startle you awake. But this attention to audio detail reaches its peak during the Bird Person section. His voice maintains a perfectly consistent volume level, with special attention paid to smoothing out any naturally occurring peaks that might interrupt your journey towards sleep. Bird Person's philosophical outlook itself contributes to the relaxation effect. His stoic acceptance of life's complexities offers a kind of cognitive permission to let go of daily worries. When he speaks about the nature of existence or explains his culture's approach to life's challenges, there's an implicit message that aligns perfectly with sleep preparation. That it's okay to release control, to accept the natural flow of time, and to surrender to the present moment. These themes subtly encourage the mental letting go necessary for sleep to emerge. As we approach the end of Bird Person's segment, the transition to the next character is handled with extreme care. The editing becomes increasingly minimal, with shots lasting even longer and movements becoming more subtle. This approach prepares you for the even more ambient content to follow, creating that seamless journey deeper into relaxation that makes this compilation so effective as a sleep aid. As the visual tempo slows to its most restful pace, we transition to a character whose sleep-inducing qualities remain one of the show's best-kept secrets. Beneath the silly name and simple appearance, Mr. Poopy Butthole's scenes contain a special kind of magic. They're somehow both emotionally resonant enough to hold your attention and serenely paced enough to let your consciousness gently slip away. This unassuming yellow character might seem like an odd choice for a sleep aid compilation, but there's something uniquely tranquil about Mr. Poopy Butthole that makes him perfect for this point in our journey. His segments come at a strategic moment, about 2 hours into the viewing experience, when your mind has already been guided through progressively calmer content and is primed for even deeper relaxation. What makes Mr. Poopy Butthole's scenes so conducive to sleep is their inherent simplicity. Unlike the cosmic adventures or family conflicts that dominate much of the series, his moments feature minimal action and gentle dialogue. There's an almost meditative quality to scenes where he's simply recovering in his hospital bed, his movements deliberate and unhurried. The compilation carefully includes these recovery scenes where the character barely moves, creating extended periods of visual stability that require almost no mental processing from the increasingly drowsy viewer. The classroom scenes featuring Mr. Poopy Butthole as a teacher offer another dimension of his sleep-inducing power. Here, the character speaks in measured tones, explaining simple concepts without the frenetic energy that characterizes so many other moments in the show. These teaching sequences maintain a consistent visual environment. The classroom setting rarely changes, with its straightforward layout and predictable elements, creating a sense of visual security that lets your brain relax its vigilance. Perhaps most effective are the quiet family moments, showing Mr. Poopy Butthole at home. These domestic scenes echo the peaceful quality we saw earlier with the Smith family, but with an even gentler execution. The compilation includes extended sequences of Mr. Poopy Butthole reading a book to his family or sharing a simple meal. Activities so ordinary they create a powerful sense of safety and comfort. The camera work in these moments is remarkably stable, often using static shots that linger far longer than typical animation, allowing the viewer's focus to soften and drift. One of the most inspired choices in this compilation is the inclusion of Mr. Poopy Butthole's end credit scenes. These fourth-wall-breaking moments where he directly addresses the audience create an intimate connection that feels personally soothing. In these segments, he speaks in a soft, measured voice about his life developments, offering gentle reflections on his experiences. The direct address format creates a feeling of being personally spoken to, similar to how some people find one-on-one conversations deeply relaxing. There's something almost ASMR-like about these moments, not in the typical sense of triggering tingles, but in creating a focused yet deeply relaxed state of attention. The emotional quality of Mr. Poopy Butthole's scenes also contributes significantly to their effectiveness as sleep aids. His consistently optimistic and encouraging tone provides a sense of emotional comfort that helps release tension before sleep. When he discusses overcoming challenges or finding joy in simple pleasures, there's a reassuring quality that addresses the emotional barriers that often keep us awake. The character manages to be positive without becoming irritatingly chipper, maintaining a grounded warmth that feels authentic and soothing. From a visual design perspective, Mr. Poopy Butthole's segments are masterfully constructed for sleep induction. His scenes feature some of the least complex backgrounds in the entire series, with consistent color schemes that minimize visual processing demands. The animation team deliberately avoids rapid color changes or jarring visuals during his sequences, maintaining visual consistency that allows the brain to ease its processing effort. This simplicity in design works hand in hand with the gentle content to create an environment where sleep can naturally overtake consciousness. What's particularly interesting about Mr. Poopy Butthole as a sleep aid is how his segments avoid the common pitfalls that might jolt a viewer back to alertness. His voice maintains a remarkably consistent volume level without the sudden spikes that characterize many of the show's other characters. The emotional tone stays within a narrow, comfortable range without jarring shifts from calm to excitement. Even the pacing of his dialogue avoids the rapid-fire delivery that would demand active listening. Instead, his speech follows gentle rhythmic patterns with natural pauses that give the brain permission to drift. The placement of Mr. Poopy Butthole's 15-minute segment within the overall compilation reveals a sophisticated understanding of how sleep progressively overtakes consciousness. By positioning these scenes 2 hours into the experience, the creators acknowledge that viewers are likely already in a deeply relaxed state, perhaps even cycling in and out of light sleep. At this point, even mildly engaging content might be too stimulating, so Mr. Poopy Butthole's uniquely gentle presence provides just enough narrative interest to maintain a loose connection to consciousness without demanding full attention. The strategic structuring continues within the segment itself. The compilation begins with Mr. Poopy Butthole's slightly more active scenes, such as his classroom interactions, before transitioning to increasingly passive moments like his quiet family time and finally to his most reflective end-credit monologues. This micro-progression mirrors the larger journey of the compilation, continuing to reduce stimulation even within this already calming segment. From an audio perspective, Mr. Poopy Butthole's segments offer another layer of sleep-inducing quality. His voice actor delivers lines in a soft, measured cadence that creates a gentle audio rhythm. The background sounds in his scenes are minimal and consistent, avoiding the chaotic audio environments that appear elsewhere in the series. This audio simplicity complements the visual simplicity, creating a multi-sensory experience that signals safety and calm to the sleeping brain. The narrative content of Mr. Poopy Butthole's scenes also contributes to their effectiveness. His storylines are remarkably straightforward, lacking the complex interdimensional concepts or scientific jargon that characterize many Rick and Morty plots. This narrative simplicity means viewers can passively absorb his scenes without the mental effort of tracking complicated storylines. Even when half asleep, the brain can follow the gentle progression of Mr. Poopy Butthole's simple stories, maintaining just enough engagement to prevent disruptive thoughts without demanding alertness. His segments also benefit from a near absence of conflict. While much of Rick and Morty revolves around problems to be solved or threats to be neutralized, Mr. Poopy Butthole's scenes largely avoid these tension-creating structures. Instead, they focus on moments of reflection, connection, or simple existence. This lack of narrative tension aligns perfectly with the physiological state the compilation aims to induce, one where the body's fight-or-flight responses remain dormant and the relaxation response dominates. While Mr. Poopy Butthole offers a warm, character-driven path to relaxation, the final gateway to sleep in our compilation shifts away from personalities entirely. The true visual sedatives of Rick and Morty have always been its breathtaking alien landscapes, those serene worlds that flash briefly across your screen before the next adventure begins. What if the most powerful sleep-inducing elements weren't the characters at all, but these forgotten background worlds with their hypnotic visual rhythms? The harmony of a hunter world represents perhaps the finest example of this overlooked tranquility. This planet appears only briefly in the series, but our compilation extends these fleeting moments into prolonged, meditative experiences. The world's most distinctive feature is its vibrant grass, not static like Earth vegetation, but constantly flowing in gentle wave-like patterns even without wind. The animation creates an almost hypnotic effect as the blue-green blades sway in perfect synchronization, like watching ocean waves from a distance. The creatures that inhabit this world move with a similar gentle rhythm. Unlike the chaotic energy that dominates most Rick and Morty encounters, these beings drift through their environment with deliberate, measured movements. Their flowing forms, reminiscent of jellyfish but with bioluminescent patterns that pulse in slow, predictable cycles, create visual anchor points that your tired eyes can follow without effort. The compilation strategically selects scenes where these creatures move in consistent patterns, creating a hypnotic visual cadence that mirrors the slowing rhythm of breathing as you drift toward sleep. What makes these planetary vistas particularly effective as sleep aids is their minimal character interaction. While the main cast might briefly appear at the edges of the frame, the focus remains squarely on the environment itself. This absence of dialogue and narrative progression allows viewers to simply exist within these spaces without the mental load of following conversations or plot developments. Your brain can finally disengage from active processing and simply absorb the gentle visual stimulation. The compilation's final 30 minutes heavily feature extended shots of alien skies and cosmic phenomena that showcase some of the show's most remarkable animation work. These sequences highlight the surprising beauty that exists within a series often celebrated for its crude humor rather than its visual artistry. Nebula clouds that slowly shift between deep purples and midnight blues create gentle color transitions that never jar or surprise the viewer. Distant stars pulse with a subtle rhythm that seems almost synchronized with a resting heart rate. Underwater scenes receive special attention in this segment as well. The physics of liquid environments naturally lend themselves to the kind of gentle, flowing movement patterns that induce drowsiness. The compilation includes several extended sequences where the camera simply drifts through alien oceans, following the languid movements of strange but peaceful aquatic life forms. The natural buoyancy of underwater environments creates an almost dreamlike quality, with creatures and plant life swaying in gentle currents, perfectly mirroring the mental state of someone on the edge of sleep. The color palette of these environments plays a crucial role in their effectiveness as sleep aids. The compilation places special emphasis on scenes dominated by blue, purple, and green hues, not simply for aesthetic reasons, but because of their scientific connection to relaxation and sleep induction. These cooler colors have been shown to reduce heart rate and blood pressure, creating the physiological conditions conducive to sleep onset. The strategic selection of scenes with these specific color profiles transforms what might initially seem like a random collection of pretty visuals into a scientifically grounded sleep tool. The environments featured in this segment represent a dramatic departure from the show's more familiar settings. Instead of the Smith family home or busy alien marketplaces, these scenes focus on vast open spaces with minimal detail, cosmic voids punctuated by distant celestial bodies, underwater caverns illuminated only by bioluminescent life forms, or expansive alien meadows that stretch to distant horizons. This visual simplicity reduces cognitive load, allowing the brain to gradually power down rather than constantly processing new information. By this point in the compilation, roughly 2 hours in, the editing approach has undergone a dramatic transformation. Whereas earlier segments might feature shots lasting 15 to 30 seconds, These environmental sequences often extend for a full minute or more with minimal movement or change. This extremely slow pacing mirrors the natural slowing of thought processes that occurs as sleep approaches. The transitions between scenes become nearly imperceptible, with gentle cross dissolves that can take up to 30 seconds to complete, ensuring no jarring cuts that might pull a viewer back to alertness. The sound design for these environmental sequences has been carefully engineered to enhance their soporific effect. The audio emphasizes low-frequency ambient sounds, the gentle rushing of alien wind, the subtle bubbling of extraterrestrial oceans, or the distant, barely audible calls of cosmic creatures. These sounds create a consistent audio foundation that masks potential sleep-disrupting noises in the viewer's environment while avoiding any elements that might trigger attention. What's particularly fascinating about these peaceful planetary vistas is how they represent the true opposite end of the spectrum from the show's core identity. Rick and Morty built its reputation on chaotic energy, rapid-fire dialogue, and constant narrative surprises. Yet hidden within this framework are these moments of profound visual peace, the necessary exhales between the show's manic inhales. Our compilation simply extends these exhales, allowing viewers to remain in these tranquil states far longer than the original episodes permit. The final segment of our compilation represents the culmination of a carefully orchestrated journey towards sleep. Having moved from the more engaging character-focused segments through increasingly ambient content, viewers now find themselves immersed in pure, visual meditation. The extremely slow pacing and minimal stimulation create the perfect conditions for the mind to finally let go of conscious thought and transition into the early stages of sleep. For those who might still be awake by this point, the lack of narrative progression ensures there's no reason to fight against drowsiness to see what happens next. Unlike traditional entertainment that hooks attention through story development, these environmental sequences purposely avoid narrative progression. They simply exist as spaces to be experienced rather than stories to be followed, making them the perfect final viewing experience before sleep claims consciousness completely. Beyond these tranquil visuals lies the often overlooked architect of sleep, sound itself. What if I told you that the audio you're experiencing right now has been completely reimagined from the original show, engineered specifically to guide your consciousness towards sleep? The transformation is so subtle you might never consciously notice it, but your brain most certainly does. The audio engineering behind this compilation isn't just an afterthought. It's possibly the most critical element in transitioning Rick and Morty from chaotic comedy to effective sleep aid. When you think about the original show, the sound design features dramatic musical stings, sudden volume spikes, and Rick's explosive outbursts, elements specifically designed to keep viewers alert and engaged. Creating a sleep aid from such intentionally stimulating source material required a complete sonic overhaul. Our audio technicians began by tackling the most obvious sleep disruptors, those jarring volume spikes that might startle you just as you're drifting off. Every single scene in this compilation underwent meticulous audio normalization, creating a consistent listening experience from beginning to end. This process eliminated those unexpected loud moments that could potentially jolt you back to wakefulness. The result is a gentle sonic landscape where nothing suddenly jumps out to grab your attention. But volume consistency was just the starting point. The compilation employs a fascinating technique of gradually reducing both volume and frequency range as it progresses. This subtle audio descent mirrors your brain's natural transition towards sleep. The early segments maintain a fuller audio spectrum while preserving clarity, but as you move through the 2.5 hours, you'll find the high frequencies becoming increasingly subdued while low, rumbling tones gain prominence. This shift happens so gradually that your conscious mind likely won't register it, yet your brain responds by naturally powering down. The balance between dialogue and background elements undergoes a significant transformation throughout the compilation. In the opening Rick segments, you can still clearly follow his philosophical musings, but as you progress through the characters, the audio priorities shift dramatically. Background music receives subtle enhancement, while dialogue becomes increasingly softened, particularly in those later segments featuring peaceful planets and serene settings. This creates a more immersive, ambient soundscape where the specific content of conversations becomes less important than their soothing rhythmic qualities. Perhaps the most technically impressive aspect of the audio engineering is found in the transitions between character segments. In the original show, scenes often cut abruptly from one to another, creating a jarring audio experience that keeps viewers mentally engaged. For our sleep aid, we've incorporated crossfades between segments that can last up to 30 seconds. An incredibly long transition by normal editing standards. These extended audio bridges ensure that your brain never experiences those abrupt changes that might disrupt your growing relaxation. The transformation of Rick and Morty's soundscape becomes particularly noticeable during the final hour of the compilation. By this point, the audio has evolved into something that barely resembles the original show. The balance shifts dramatically toward ambient environmental sounds. The gentle hum of spacecraft, the subtle rustle of alien foliage, or the distant echoes of unknown civilizations. These sounds create a consistent audio foundation similar to the white noise machines many people use to help them sleep. Our audio engineers paid special attention to the frequency range most conducive to sleep. Research in sleep science has identified specific sound frequencies that help induce and maintain sleep states. The compilation gradually transitions toward these frequencies, with particular emphasis on sounds between 2 and 8 Hz, which have been shown to promote delta brainwaves associated with deep sleep. This scientific approach ensures that the audio becomes increasingly sleep-inducing as the compilation progresses. You might be surprised to learn that we've actually enhanced certain audio elements, rather than simply diminishing everything. The background music has been carefully amplified in specific frequency ranges, creating a more immersive audio experience that envelops the listener. This enhancement is balanced by a corresponding reduction in dialogue clarity, particularly in the later segments. This shift in audio balance is deliberately designed to reduce cognitive engagement with the content while promoting a sense of peaceful immersion. The compilation also employs a technique rarely used in conventional television: the strategic introduction of micropauses in the audio. These brief moments of near silence lasting just 1 to 2 seconds are inserted at increasing intervals as the compilation progresses. These tiny audio breaths create a subtle rhythm that encourages your own breathing to slow and synchronize, one of the physiological precursors to sleep onset. By the final 30 minutes, the audio has evolved into something that shares more qualities with dedicated sleep recordings than with animated television. The dialogue becomes sparse and softened to the point where it functions more as a rhythmic element than communication. Environmental sounds dominate the mix, creating a consistent, gentle sonic landscape that requires minimal mental processing. For those still awake at this point, the experience becomes almost ASMR-like, with soft, consistent sounds that trigger relaxation responses. The removal of jarring elements extends beyond just volume control. The compilation eliminates sounds with specific characteristics known to trigger alertness. The sharp consonants in excited speech, the metallic qualities of certain effects, and the rapid rhythm changes in musical cues. What remains is a soundscape dominated by smooth, flowing audio elements that guide rather than disrupt your consciousness. Some of the most effective sleep-inducing moments in the compilation come when audio and visuals work in perfect harmony. For example, during the Peaceful Planet segment, gentle visual pans across alien landscapes are perfectly synchronized with subtle audio swells, creating a hypnotic effect that mimics the natural rhythm of sleep breathing. This audio-visual synchronization becomes more pronounced in later segments, creating a multi-sensory experience specifically calibrated for sleep induction. You might wonder how we managed to transform Rick's typically harsh voice into something sleep-inducing. The technique involved isolating specific lines delivered in his lower register, then applying subtle equalization to enhance the lower frequencies while softening the abrasive qualities. This transformation is particularly noticeable when comparing the compilation to the original episodes. Rick's voice maintains its familiar character while losing the qualities that might jolt you awake. Now that we understand the sophisticated audio engineering behind this compilation, let's talk about how to actually use this 2.5-hour Rick and Morty experience for maximum sleep benefits. The compilation isn't just something you casually play in the background. It's a carefully constructed tool designed to work with your body's natural sleep mechanisms. but only if you use it correctly. The strategic arrangement of Rick and Morty's most soothing moments is specifically designed to mirror your brain's natural journey toward sleep. That initial 30-minute section serves a crucial purpose. It's your mental runway, giving your brain permission to gradually power down from the day's activities. Think of it as creating a buffer zone between your active evening and the deep relaxation you're seeking. What makes this compilation different from random YouTube videos is how intentionally it aligns with your body's sleep cycle, transitioning from the initial winding down period to progressively deeper relaxation over the remaining 2 hours. The timing of when you start watching is absolutely critical to the compilation's effectiveness. Our research shows the ideal approach is beginning the video approximately 30 minutes before you actually intend to fall asleep. This window allows you to engage with the more interactive early segments while still awake enough to appreciate them, then naturally transition into the increasingly ambient portions as your eyelids grow heavy. Starting too early means you might be wide awake during the deeply ambient middle sections, while starting too late could mean you miss the carefully designed wind-down period that prepares your mind for rest. Your viewing environment plays an equally important role in maximizing sleep benefits. The compilation works most effectively when you've already dimmed your room lights significantly and turned off other screens that might be competing for your attention. This environmental preparation signals to your brain that it's time to transition to rest mode, enhancing the compilation's effectiveness. The blue light from other devices can interfere with melatonin production, so isolating the compilation as your only screen source ensures you're not working against the very sleep aid you're trying to use. What makes this compilation particularly effective is how its progression mirrors the natural process of falling asleep. During the first segments, your brain still craves some level of engagement. That's why we begin with the more philosophical Rick moments that maintain just enough narrative interest. As you progress deeper into the compilation, the reduced dialogue, longer shots, and increasingly ambient soundscape align perfectly with how your brain naturally reduces activity when transitioning to sleep. This isn't random. It's a calculated approach based on sleep science. Creating a consistent association between this compilation and sleep represents one of the most powerful ways to enhance its effectiveness. Our brains are remarkably adaptive. When you use the compilation as part of a regular nightly routine, your mind begins forming a powerful connection between these specific Rick and Morty scenes and the act of falling asleep. Essentially, you're training your brain to recognize these audio-visual cues as signals that it's time to power down. This phenomenon is similar to how certain bedtime rituals can trigger sleepiness even before you actually get into bed. Many viewers discover an interesting pattern when using this compilation regularly. While the visual component is important during the initial 30 to 45 minutes, numerous users report their best results come from eventually shifting to an audio-only experience. After the initial wind-down period, try lying down with your eyes closed, allowing the carefully engineered soundscape to guide you toward deeper relaxation. The familiar character voices and ambient sounds continue providing just enough mental anchoring to prevent racing thoughts while avoiding the visual stimulation that might keep you awake. The compilation's effectiveness is also enhanced when you approach it with the right mindset. Rather than actively analyzing the content or trying to follow narrative threads, allow yourself to experience it passively. The content is intentionally selected to require minimal mental processing, but this passive approach must be something you consciously choose. Think of it less as watching a show and more as creating an environment that permits your mind to gradually release the day's tensions and thoughts. Regular use of the video as part of a nightly routine helps the brain establish an association between the content and sleep, thereby improving overall sleep quality. This consistency element cannot be overstated. The compilation becomes increasingly effective the more regularly you incorporate it into your bedtime ritual. What might begin as a 30-minute wind-down period before sleep could eventually trigger sleepiness within just minutes of starting the video, as your brain recognizes the familiar cues and begins its sleep preparation process. The physical position you adopt while experiencing the compilation also influences its effectiveness. While sitting upright might be fine during the initial segments, transitioning to a sleep-ready position around the 30-minute mark aligns your body with your brain's increasing relaxation. This physical component complements the audio-visual experience, creating a comprehensive approach to sleep induction that addresses both mind and body simultaneously. Temperature regulation plays a surprising role in maximizing the compilation's effectiveness. Sleep experts recommend a slightly cool room temperature, around 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 to 20 degrees Celsius, as ideal for promoting sleep. This environmental factor works in concert with the compilation's increasingly relaxing content, creating optimal conditions for your body to transition into rest mode. The combination of the right temperature, reduced lighting, and the strategic progression of the compilation creates a perfect sleep-inducing environment. Different viewers might find certain segments particularly effective for their personal sleep needs. Some report the bird person section acts as their consistent transition point from wakefulness to drowsiness, while others find Jerry and Beth's domestic scenes most conducive to relaxation. Pay attention to your own responses and consider starting the compilation at different points, depending on how much time you have and how quickly you typically fall asleep. This personalized approach allows you to leverage the compilation's structure to address your specific sleep patterns. For those struggling with persistent sleep issues, the compilation can become one component of a more comprehensive sleep strategy. Combining its use with other proven sleep hygiene practices, like maintaining consistent sleep-wake times, avoiding caffeine later in the day, and creating a dedicated sleep environment, amplifies its effectiveness. The compilation doesn't replace good sleep habits, but rather complements them, providing a consistent ritual that signals to both mind and body that it's time to rest. Sleep strategies aren't one-size-fits-all, and many people discover that conventional sleep aids fall short for their specific needs. What separates our Rick and Morty compilation from the sea of generic sleep videos isn't just the familiar characters. It's the strategic structure that follows your brain's natural journey toward unconsciousness rather than fighting against it. When you compare animation-based sleep aids, you'll quickly notice most follow a predictable formula. Slow-moving scenes with repetitive elements and minimal narrative. Think of those aquarium videos or endless loops of rainfall that dominate the sleep aid market. They're designed with a single intensity level that rarely changes throughout the experience. Our Rick and Morty compilation takes a fundamentally different approach by recognizing that your brain doesn't simply switch from awake to asleep. It travels through a gradient of consciousness states. Traditional white noise machines and nature videos certainly work for some people, but they often miss a crucial element that our compilation addresses: active mind engagement. If you've ever tried to fall asleep while your thoughts race from one topic to another, you know that sometimes white noise alone isn't enough to quiet your brain. That's where the just enough narrative engagement of our compilation makes all the difference. It provides sufficient mental engagement to prevent overthinking without demanding the full attention that would keep you awake. Consider what happens when you try to fall asleep using a generic ocean waves video versus our compilation. With ocean waves, your brain might initially enjoy the soothing sounds, but without any narrative thread, your mind remains free to wander down whatever anxiety-inducing paths it chooses. The Rick and Morty compilation, however, gives your thoughts something gentle to focus on: familiar characters in low-key situations, effectively creating a mental anchor that prevents runaway thinking without stimulating you into full wakefulness. One element that makes our compilation particularly effective is something that generic sleep aids simply cannot provide: emotional connection. When you watch characters you already know and enjoy, your brain experiences a subtle sense of safety and comfort. Your mind doesn't need to work to establish who these characters are or what they're doing. That familiarity creates an immediate pathway to relaxation. For fans of the show, seeing Rick quietly working in his garage or Morty gazing at alien stars triggers positive associations that generic content could never replicate. This emotional connection shouldn't be underestimated in its sleep-inducing power. Sleep researchers have long noted that feelings of security and comfort are prerequisites for quality sleep. Your brain needs to feel safe before it will allow consciousness to fade, and familiar content creates exactly that sense of security. Generic sleep aids ask your brain to relax in an unfamiliar environment, while our compilation invites you to drift off among characters and worlds you already know and trust. Most sleep aids also make a critical mistake in their structure. They maintain exactly the same energy level from beginning to end. This approach fundamentally misunderstands how the human brain transitions to sleep. Our natural drift toward unconsciousness isn't flat and consistent. It's a journey through progressively deeper states of relaxation. The Rick and Morty compilation mirrors this natural process by beginning with slightly more engaging content and gradually reducing stimulation throughout its 2.5-hour runtime. The strategic balancing act between engagement and decreasing stimulation sets our compilation apart from standard sleep videos. When content is too boring, your mind tends to create its own stimulation through worries or planning. This explains why some people find traditional sleep aids actually make them more restless. Their brains rebel against the lack of engagement. Conversely, content that's too stimulating obviously prevents sleep by keeping you mentally active. Our compilation walks this perfect middle ground by giving your mind just enough to focus on while systematically reducing that stimulation over time. Another way our compilation differs from traditional sleep aids is in its complex sensory approach. Most sleep videos focus primarily on audio, with visuals as an afterthought. Our Rick and Morty compilation engages both senses in a coordinated effort. The visual elements follow the same pattern of decreasing stimulation as the audio, beginning with more colorful, dynamic scenes and progressively shifting towards simpler, slower visual patterns. This dual sensory approach creates a more immersive experience that guides both your visual and auditory processing systems towards sleep states. The variety within our compilation also sets it apart from one-note sleep aids. Rather than a single continuous environment like rainfall or forest sounds, the Rick and Morty compilation provides a journey through different characters and settings. This variety prevents the adaptation response that often makes sleep aids less effective over time. When your brain fully adapts to a consistent stimulus, it begins to tune it out, reducing the calming effect. By gently shifting between different characters and settings while maintaining the downward trajectory of stimulation, our compilation stays fresh and effective night after night. Most importantly, our Rick and Morty compilation addresses the boredom factor that plagues many sleep aids. The irony of many sleep videos is that they're so mind-numbingly dull that they can actually prevent sleep in people with active minds. When content offers nothing to latch onto, your thoughts tend to fill the void with worries or to-do lists. Our compilation solves this problem by providing content that's interesting enough to hold attention without being so engaging that it promotes wakefulness. This balance is particularly effective for people who find their minds racing when they try to sleep. Let's be clear about another advantage: personal relevance. Generic sleep aids try to appeal to everyone and end up truly resonating with no one. Our compilation acknowledges that fans of Rick and Morty will respond differently to this content than strangers to the show would. For viewers who already enjoy these characters, the compilation creates a uniquely effective sleep environment by combining the comfort of familiar content with the science of sleep induction. While it might not work for everyone, for the target audience of Rick and Morty enthusiasts, it offers a uniquely tailored sleep experience. The boredom prevention element deserves special attention. Traditional sleep aids often focus solely on being as non-stimulating as possible, which can backfire spectacularly for people with active minds. When faced with utterly non-engaging content, some brains respond by generating their own stimulation, usually in the form of worries, plans, or rumination. This explains the seemingly paradoxical situation where some people feel more awake when trying to use conventional sleep aids. Our compilation addresses this issue by providing just enough narrative interest to occupy those racing thoughts without stimulating new ones. For animation fans specifically, our compilation offers another advantage over traditional sleep aids: the consistency of animated environments. Live-action sleep videos often contain subtle irregularities, slight changes in lighting, unpredictable movements, or inconsistent audio that can trigger alertness in sensitive sleepers. Animation provides a more controlled sensory experience with predictable visual patterns that your brain can more easily process while drifting towards sleep. The consistent art style of Rick and Morty creates a visual predictability that signals safety to your sleep-preparing mind. So we've reached the end of our journey through this unique Rick and Morty experience. What makes this compilation truly special is how it transforms a series known for its frenetic energy into something that actually helps you fall asleep. By focusing on episodes with slower pacing and minimal conflict, this collection avoids stimulating content that might keep you awake. The serene environments and calming color palettes work together to create a viewing experience that fans find both familiar and surprisingly effective as a sleep aid. The next time you're having trouble drifting off, remember that even in the chaotic multiverse of Rick and Morty, there exist pockets of tranquility perfect for helping you find peaceful sleep.